Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to the Scrutiny Committee for Adults and Health on the 15th of May. I'd also like to welcome any members of the public that are present. I'm Jill Slocum, the chairman of this Scrutiny meeting. The agenda pack and papers are available on Mudgov or directly from the council's website from the link which was sent out to members. I'm requesting that other members and officers turn off their microphones please and videos. Please remember to turn off your microphones and videos when you speak. This helps with the background noise, call quality and anything disrupting the meeting. Thank you. When I invite somebody to speak, could you clearly state who you are for the benefit of anyone who's listening to the meeting? They can identify who is speaking. Please can I also remind committee members to use the chat function solely for committee business, as it can be a little bit distracting. Warmly welcome everyone and the media who also may want to join us today. As the agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. There are other members to arrive, but I think there's been a parking issue. That's why we started a few minutes later. So thank you. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. We have received apologies from Councillor Lawrence, for whom Councillor Power is substituting. Apologies from Councillor Woods, for whom Councillor Osborne will be substituting, not here yet. Also apologies from Councillor Bruce. Councillors Robbins and Govia are online.
Welcome everyone. The minutes of the item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which is pages 9 to 14. Can I have your approval of these minutes, please? All agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Members of personal interest as members of city, district, town and parish councils is available on the website for everyone to see. But are there any others? No? Good. Item 4 is public question time. I don't believe we have any public question time today. So the first item is the work programme, which is pages 15 to 18. And Jamie is to note that there's been a change since the agenda was published. And the provision date for the next meeting is now Thursday, the 10th of July. And this meeting will be held at the Bridgewater room, Sedgemoor room here, not as it says County Hall. The meeting dates will be finalised at the AGM on the AGM on the 21st of May. We have to note, Jamie, to note that the intermediate care workshop has now been arranged for Thursday, the 12th of June. We're still, I think, waiting for some people to come back on that. And we need to know if we want to add any new items for the agenda for the work forward programme and agree the items. So I've done a little bit in case anyone hasn't thought of anything. Okay, a little bit of pre-planning here. So I wondered, we've got on the items to be added, Musgrove Park Hospital development possible update. I wondered if that would be possible for the next meeting. Oh, one.
I think they're online today anyway, aren't they, to talk through maternity services anyway?
Yeah.
So do you think it would be sensible if you covered it in that same space as you're doing that? But I know they are online.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing we wanted to ask was the stroke services in Somerset. We wanted to know how it's working and from the overall how the so I wondered whether that would be people would like that on the next agenda.
No, it's not happened yet, so it's going to be very difficult to see how it's working or not. So I think yes, I absolutely agree. You might want that on the agenda, but probably later on in the process.
All right. Okay. Does anybody have any ideas what they would like? Anything pressing they would like to put on the next work forward plan, please?
There's a hand online.
Hand online. I can't see that. Rachel Hanley, can I ask you to speak, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm the public health rep at this scrutiny, and I just wondered if I could suggest for an informal workshop session on an overview of the public health functions and to give you a clearer idea of what assurance processes we need for public health as a whole, and I think that probably with the changes in councillor representations, it's just useful to give an overview of the services that sit within us. So it was an offer, really, that we could do something.
Okay, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. I think that sounds very sensible. So we'll put that on for the workshop or the focus group. We like to call it a focus group so that we are focused on the way forward. Okay, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to put on there? You can see the added items to be added to agenda. Nobody. So we'll put together something, and I think we'll just put something together on the next bit. Is that all right? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. All right. Item 6 is the budget monitoring, and this is to invite Christian Evans to present. I think Christian is online. I'm really sorry that.
Sorry,
lucky to see you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So hopefully you can hear me okay. So Chris Evans, Head of Financial Business Partnering. So this is the month 11 Adults and Housing Report to the end of February 2025. Excuse me, just a quick reminder of the recommendations. So if there's any general comments or observations that Scrutiny would like to consider making to the executive on the report, and also if any actions set out in the report are appropriate, and if there were any further actions that should be included in the report. So moving on to the actual report itself. So for adults, on a net budget of 239,417,000, adults are forecasting an underspend of 4.472 million. That's an increase in underspend of 206,000 from month 10. So this equates to an underspend of 1.9% of the budget. So I would say overall the underspend is mainly due to the fantastic My Life, My Future transformation programme, which was supported by Newton, and the commissioning operational work carried out within the market to reduce residential and nursing fees, which is obviously great news. A few highlights on the report. So mental health. So this budget includes individuals who have a diagnosis for dementia. There is a forecast underspend of 1.275 million, a decrease of 217,000 from month 10. Home care and supported living continues to be an area of growth. This is in line with the enabling people to remain in their homes. The decrease of 217,000 from month 10 is due to the extensions of locums. As you can imagine, locums are far more expensive than salaried staff. Learning disabilities. There is less demand than anticipated in the Discovery contract, leading to an increase in underspend of the underspend of 1.354 million from month 10. Commissioning. There is a continued demand within intermediate care, leading to an increased overspend forecast of 858,000 from month 10. Work is being carried out with our partners in health to identify any mitigations. And finally, just to highlight in adults that 90% of the budget for adult social care is spent on individual care and support needs, so that obviously that is a risk going into 25-26. Moving on to housing, on a net budget of 6.290 million. As with month 10, they are forecasting to be on budget. A few highlights in there. So in the housing option service, there is continued demand for temporary accommodation. Despite seeing an increase in demand for bed and breakfast accommodation, the service is endeavouring to remove the long-term option for families. That's demonstrated in the graph you'll see on page 25, showing a decrease of families in B&B for over 6 weeks, from 9 in January down to 2 in February. So again, good news in that respect. So as a whistle-stop tour, so happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Christian? No? Christian, I did have a question. But it may not be you that may want to answer this, but on the mental health, the budget includes individuals of a diagnosis of dementia, and you've got an underspend there of 1.275, which is, can you just elaborate a little bit? The decrease from that, is it because they're having home care, or is it because is there adequate home care for this? I didn't quite understand. I just needed you to expand on that one, please.
Do you want me to do that for you?
Yeah, please, Mel. Yes.
So So in that budget, we also have direct payments. And within that, we did have a return of a direct payment, of quite a large direct payment. We get direct payment returns back sometimes because people go into hospital, and therefore we can have the direct payments back at that point. Sometimes people pass away and we can have direct payments back at that time. So it was a recoup mainly in that. However, the My Life, My Future and continuing work around how we deliver differently for mental health is working. You'll see in next year's budget, we have a savings attached to that, and we need to make that in this year so that it's full year for next year. So some of that is also about some of the changes we're making to keep people at home, but also have different types of support. So if you think about it, we've got Open Mental Health that's doing an awful lot of work for us in this space, enabling people to have a different option, and therefore it's an accumulation of a couple of things that have helped us in that space.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, Christian, I just wanted to ask you on commissioning. In the report, and this is me, forgive me if I'm not quite getting this, but it says here, due to My Life, My Future, 25% of the underspend is returned to the Integrated Care Board, and it's a pooled agreement. Can you just explain that a bit, or is that too different? Is that
No, that's fine.
is that Christian?
Yeah, so it's a 75%, 25% split between ourselves and health, and so obviously if there is an underspend, we give that back to our partners in health because it's a pooled budget.
Oh, I see. So that's a pooled budget. Apologies, I should have known that. I just wanted to check because when somebody else asked me that question, I wasn't able to give them definitive answer. So thank you. Well, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Solly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit puzzled just about the mental health budget as well, which could be me, being frank. I'm involved in the policy development committee for sort of national policy around mental health. So I'm on a journey with my understanding. And my understanding was that dementia was usually an adult social care, not put into the sort of under the category of mental health, but obviously it is here. But I just wondered, with the growing demands for mental health services, which is the data's there, like young people, could that underspend not be rolled out and used in other ways to support people, because those demands for mental health are clearly there in our communities in Somerset? But so that's one question: where will that underspend? Could that underspend be used effectively? But also just a query about why dementia is put on not adult social care budget and put into the budget of category of mental health.
No problem at all. So it sits under our mental health budget because that's where dementia falls, and that's where our team of expertise manages it. So this is the adult social care budget. So learning disabilities sit separately, and our team, our older adults team who support people with dementia, sit in our mental health team. That's normal practice across the country. When you're talking about changes in the Mental Health Act that will happen shortly, well, within the next, let's see how long, that will do for a lot, and that will do for working age, but it will still impact on some of our people with dementia in that space. The underspending that there is really good news, because what it's doing is saying that actually we're supporting people at home to stay at home longer, and that's what it's all about. That means if we don't place people into residential care or keep people exactly where they want to be, when they have dementia, with a different support mechanisms around them, using tech-enabled care, they get a better result. So the overall budget is underspent this year. We did expect that to happen. Luckily it did, because of My Life, My Future. We'll continue that. So in next year's budget, we have put in an increase for demand that is coming into our mental health services for dementia and for other areas. So I wouldn't want to use money unnecessarily. It's about how do we support people effectively. We have to save money in budgets. That's how it is as a local authority. So that's what we try to do as part of this process.
Thank you, Mel. And I think we do need to be really pleased that we have an underspend, and we really need to be pleased with the work that's been done. So thank you, Christian, for your excellent report, as always, and our understanding with Mel, who's always by our side to clarify the points that we perhaps don't quite get. So thank you very much. But I do think we need to be really very positive there, a real positive. My angle has always been, we want to get people home, we want to keep people home as long as possible. And I think that's the journey that we all want to go to. So we all want to face. Okay, so thank you very much, Christian. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now go to item 7, and I'd like to welcome our guests today, and I'd like to thank you very, very much for coming. And I'm going to now hand over, you came in at perfect timing, absolutely perfect. So the maternity services in Somerset, what we've decided to do is we're very, very lucky to have Dr. Melanie Isles here from Yeovil Maternity, or from Somerset Maternity, and who is going to give us a précis of what we all know of the sad situation at the moment. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let members ask questions after, and Dr. Melanie Isles is prepared for this. And she's going to help us in any way clarify. And I know Mel is right there as well. So yeah, but you know, Mel's my go-to when everything goes wrong. You see, Mel, you know. So if I can hand over now to Miss Dr. Melanie Isles, please. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. So yes, I'm Melanie Isles and I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Somerset Foundation Trust.
Sorry, could you move your microphone? Oh, that's not playing games.
Yeah, can we all move our microphones as near as possible, please? That's okay.
I might actually just change that one. Sorry, that's the light flashing within the table. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
Well, that was a good.
Can you turn the other one off? Thank you. The other one off.
So I'll start again. Hello, I'm Melanie Isles and I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Somerset Foundation Trust. I want to say that I'm also a paediatrician by background, and so actually the decisions that we've had to make this week, I absolutely understand the impact of those. And I must say, from all of us, it's been an extremely difficult week, and you know, we absolutely realise the impact that this decision has on the local pregnant women and birthing people of Yeovil. You know, and we really apologise for that. So, as most of you will be aware, we've had to make a decision to close to the special care baby unit at Yeovil Hospital for an initial period of 6 months. And also that means that we're unable to support women to birth during that time as well. Just a little bit of the background. We had a CQC inspection back in January, and we received a Section 29A notice, and that was around. This is all around patient safety, and it's the safety for children and babies. So bear with me while we explain through the sort of sequence of events, because I'm very aware that this might seem a bit illogical, especially as the next item on the agenda is how much progress we've made regarding our, you know, the improvements since the CQC visit to talk about maternity and obstetrics. So I know the two things might seem illogical, so do bear with me while I talk through those. So there are significant safety concerns at Yeovil, and that's around staffing, and that's around having the appropriate trained staff present at the right times of day, so the most senior paediatricians at the times where it's the busiest. We know that Yeovil's is a smallish hospital, and we know one of the challenges with small hospitals is actually attracting people to work there, and so there's been lots of gaps on the rota, and also there's very sort of small rota of people that are working together, so it's vulnerable. We've been actively trying to recruit paediatricians but haven't succeeded. And what the CQC report showed, and the CQC came because we had been very open and transparent about some of the challenges we had. We're already trying to work with the paediatricians at Yeovil to come up with solutions and improve safety even before the CQC visited. What they've said is that the doctors on call in the evenings, the resident doctors in training, are left quite exposed because there's not senior doctor presence, and they have to cover a number of areas. So they have to cover the emergency department, they have to cover the paediatric inpatient wards, they have to cover the special care baby unit, and that is very difficult for them, and that's where the safety concerns arise. We made the decision to close the special care baby unit because that means that we can really focus on some of the other improvements we need to do in the paediatric ward.
and to bring the services, modernise them and bring them up to date so that children are seen more quickly. There's more senior decision making. We can discharge some of them quicker as well. So recognising the sick children, but also how we discharge them quicker. The numbers of babies on the special care baby unit are much smaller. And even with the fact we won't be able to do deliveries, that's a more manageable number of women, 3 to 4 per day. And I know for those women that's really significant, but compared with the number of children that we would have to turn away when they were critically unwell, that there's a big difference. So that's why we've chosen to do it in this way. Colleagues in Musgrove Park Hospital, the CQC report is not out yet. It's here for factor accuracy, but we know that there's a good service at Musgrove Park Hospital. But the paediatricians there don't cover neonate. They've got separate rotas, and so whilst we can bring them in alongside to help with the children's bit of the service, it's very difficult for them to cover the sick newborn babies as well. I'll stop for a breath there, and I'll go to my colleagues to see if there's anything critical I've missed. I think that's probably a summary of where we are. I suppose the other thing to say is that we've said in the initial period, we will be continuously working really hard to review this, and we will formally review it at 3 months and 6 months as well. But we recognise there's lots to do, and we're really clear that when we reopen, we need to be sure that we've met some key criteria and that it's safe to do so. Over the last 48 hours, all women who are booked to deliver at Yeovil have been contacted by their community midwife, and we've sent them a letter as well, so they've got written information. There's lots of information on our website, and we're really looking to identify those women that are the most vulnerable, that it's going to be difficult for them to travel to either Musgrove Park, Bath or Dorchester, depending on where they live.
Okay, so if you'd like to turn your microphone off, Dr. Manny, we'll go to some questions now, and then we'll allow you to, because we've got everyone wanting to speak. So I just want to, first of all, I've got some questions, but I'm going to wait for the members first. So I'd like to go to Councillor Trimnell first, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I had my 3 children between 1999 and 2006 at Yeovil Hospital. I know for a fact, definitely for the first 2, and sadly my daughter's a 3rd child and you just get on, don't you? But I know for a fact there was not a special care baby unit at Yeovil Hospital at that time. There was a unit that babies could go to for jaundice or, you know, just a little bit of help or oxygen or whatever, but there wasn't a special care baby unit. We know that in midwife-led birthing centres, they don't have a special care baby unit. And we know that for home births, there is obviously no special care baby unit. So what I'm struggling to make the connection with is why the maternity unit has to be closed down because of the no special care baby unit services, when quite clearly it can and has functioned elsewhere. And what's going to happen instead is that women who might have a problem may experience that problem now on a journey to a hospital. I represent Wincanton and Bruton. People from Bruton often go to Bath anyway for their maternity services, but people from Wincanton go down the A303 and they go to Yeovil. So people in my division are going to be affected by this. And I'm really concerned about that extra stress of journey for people who don't have cars. So a lot of women have to take a taxi or find somebody to take them. And I'm really concerned about the manageability. And not only that, if you've gone to Musgrove to have your baby and you want your family and friends to come and visit, it's that extra journeying. And so all of those, I think, are huge concerns that need to be addressed. Thank you.
No, thank you, and really recognise those concerns, and they are things that we're actively looking to support those women that you identify that really are the most vulnerable, that are going to have to travel that extra distance. With regards to a special care baby unit, the terminology we use changes, but there will have been when you delivered a level of special care baby units. All acute hospitals have some kind of level. Yeovil has the lowest level that does the least intensive care and generally stabilises sick babies. And if they need to be ventilated for more than 24 hours, they're moved off of that unit. But there needs to be that provision. I mean, for most women, when they go in and have a baby, they don't go anywhere near a paediatrician, even at the delivery. But we know that in some cases, birthing is really very risky, and children do need a lot of additional support, and sometimes do need that extra support on a neonatal unit or a special care baby unit. We are used to stabilising babies and transferring them to more specialist units as well. With regards to the midwifery-led unit, that's something that we've thought about quite hard, because we thought, could we keep open a midwifery-led unit within the hospital during this period? And we've got advice from across the country to see whether there are any midwifery-led units within an acute hospital. One of the problems is that the model, when you've got an obstetric-led unit and then a midwifery unit side by side, the level of risk taking that the midwives can take is high. It's different. It's a different type of risk, because you only have to go down the corridor into the obstetric unit. And so, but with a standalone, that kind of risk assessment and transferring women very quickly, if you recognise that the labour's not going as it should do, it is a different risk assessment. So in the first instance, we felt the safe thing to do was to stop all deliveries. But what we were very much looking to do very rapidly is to see what delivery is there any possibility, and we don't know, we need to work this all through, and Sally's putting her hand up, of having a midwifery-led unit, either at Yeovil or somewhere close by, and looking at the elective sections as well, because we know a number of women have elective sections as well, and generally don't need much support after an elective section. So we need to work all of those things through to see what we can do that's safe. But in the first instance, we wanted to make sure that we were really minimising risk. I'll hand over to Sally.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a little bit more, because obviously we're working with a group of staff, midwives particularly, who are massively impacted by this decision as well. So that's very much played into our decision to, at the moment, we need to hold our staff and support them to be able to continue delivering the amazing care that they offer to their women and birthing people and the whole communities that they work in and very much are part of as well. And as part of that risk assessment around the midwife-led birth, these midwives are not used to working in a midwife-led birth centre, where your whole risk assessment, your ongoing concerns, everything you're thinking 10 steps ahead is very different to when you're used to having an emergency buzzer when 12 different professionals will come in. So we have to be supportive of our staff and make sure they have the right training and support to be able to deliver those services safely for them and for their service users. But absolutely looking at how we can develop our midwife-led services for the women and families of Yeovil is a top priority for the next phase, once we've had a chance to support our staff through this difficult decision. And we've already started having conversations with our home birth team, our practice development team, and our colleagues in Musgrove who work in a similar way in our birthing centre to see what we can start developing to drive that forward at pace.
May I ask a second?
Quickly, because we've got a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's just that another point to raise is that you speak about the difficulty in recruitment, and that seems to be the big issue. I know for a fact that there are not enough jobs and training positions for doctors who want to go on and train. They come out of university, they do their foundation years, and they can't get a job, and this is becoming an increasing problem. I find it really difficult to put these shortages together with the shortages of jobs. Over and over again, this seems to happen. And I just wonder, what is it that in this area that is making it particularly difficult? Because obviously you're able to recruit to Musgrove. So what is causing the issues locally in Yeovil?
You go on, James.
Hi. James Coulson, I'm the Associate Medical Director for these services. And you are absolutely right that there is a dichotomy between what's being trained and what we're going to need. And that's a national picture, that's not the local picture. And in the Southwest, generally, the medical training is very good, as it is with other allied professionals. And generally, we tend to hold on to our doctors because they want to work in the Southwest, because it's a nice place to work, but also we've got some really strong hospitals with some really good departments. But increasingly, especially at the specialist level, the consultant level, the picture has totally changed across the country and in the Southwest, and we're just reflective of that. And the more specialists we get around paediatrics, and especially neonatology, the special care baby unit, the neonatal unit, that's becoming harder and harder to recruit to. And what we've increasingly found is that lots of areas of medicine have become more specialised. And we found that with neonatology, that branches of doctors who are doing paediatrics want to specialise off on neonatology and want to work in bigger units with bigger neonatology and special care baby units, because where the babies are brings a higher number of those specialists. So, for example, as Melanie said, in Musgrove Park, the paediatric doctors have one rota, and the neonatology, the special care baby doctors, have another rota, and we have 7 on that rota at the moment. The difficulty in making sure we keep that recruitment up is challenging just on its own. In the Yeovil side, our paediatricians do paediatrics and neonatology together, which is in some respects a slightly older model of medical training. And finding those specialists that do both of those is very challenging in that environment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And thank you very much, Sarah.
I now go to Councillor Sully.
Good morning. I just want to bring it back to the impact and the preparation for the decision you've made. So I've got three questions. I'll ask the questions and then I'll give you the context of the questions. So first question is, how many times have you closed this unit in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? How are you supporting women currently expecting to use the unit? You've talked about you're looking to identify those that are most vulnerable. It feels to me that you're doing that, you're doing that quite late. Couldn't that have been done by now? Third question, did you consult with other hospitals in advance to prepare them? Putting all of ourselves in the shoes of people that were expecting to use the unit now or next couple of weeks. I can put myself in those shoes because 17 years ago, when I was 10 days overdue, due to be induced, the following day, Yeovil closed the maternity ward. I just got a phone call, it was closed. No help, no information about what would happen to me. First time having a baby, and it's the only time I've only got one child, 17. And just no information, nothing happened. My midwife knew somebody at Taunton Musgrove, I fell through the back door. I ended up going to Taunton. I was in a corridor, there was preeclampsia, ladies with preeclampsia next to me, and I was outside premature baby. So I was, just found a space. And the good thing was I had a midwife throughout my birth. So I know how it feels, and there will be people out there in our communities that are very, very unsure, and you're looking to identify who these people are. You've written a letter to people. So I feel that the decision's been made as a sort of, and I don't think patients are necessarily, women using your services and family using your services may be forgotten in this process, and being somebody who's experienced that, I feel very concerned. So those are my questions. Have you closed the unit before? Can you give a few more details of how you're working with and helping and supporting, and did you prepare other hospitals in advance? And can you detail that, please?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to hear about your personal traumatic time. So I'm going to answer the second first, which is about the women. We have spoken to all of the women who have booked. I think you sort of probably misheard. We have already spoken to every single woman that has been booked to deliver at Yeovil. The letter is additional information for them. We're also working with translation services, and we're already looking to identify those women who are going to struggle to travel the alternative distances. This is the first time we have truly closed for a period of time, but what sometimes happens with maternity and neonatal units is that if there isn't enough staffing and they're full, they temporarily shut for a period of time. And I think that's probably what happened to you in your case, that there either wasn't any beds on the special care unit, or there was no beds on the obstetric ward, or there was a staffing issue. And we know that that does happen. It's not a practice that I think is very good, but it does happen from time to time. Smaller units, again, they've got less resilience, and therefore it tends to happen more. But I think that's a slightly sort of separate sort of issue, which is very different from the decision to fully stop for 6 months. We absolutely have liaised with our surrounding trusts. So what I didn't mention was a bit of the context about the absolute speed with this, and that's because the reason it was so quick was because last week we had 4 consultant paediatricians off sick at the same time, and 2 of them telling us that they were feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and we had 3 locums covering as well. Locums are good, but however good a locum is, they're not working in a department they know really well, and when there's a department that's already got safety issues, that adds to that. So we spoke, and when this was about to happen, we didn't think we were going to be able to cover the rota over the bank holiday weekend, and so we spoke to our colleagues in Bath and in Dorchester, and we actually did that both informally. We reached out, I spoke to the chief medical officer, we spoke to the directors of midwifery, we spoke to the clinical directors for obstetrics and paediatrics informally, and then we did that formally with the ICB, with all our partners. We managed to patch together that rota for that bank holiday weekend, but we realised that we just could not continue in the situation that we were in, and hence why this decision has been made quite rapidly as it has, because we know we just can't continue like this, and so we had to make a pretty rapid decision to do so. But identifying the women as a priority has been an absolute priority. We only made the decision at 4 o'clock on Monday because of the processes that we have to go through. So we have been working really rapidly following that, and this was really not something we wanted to make. Have I answered all of your questions? Have I missed any out?
Yeah, I'll pass to let other people speak. Thank you.
Sally wants to add something as well. Thank you. So just a really important point that throughout all of this, I've got Donna sat next to me, who's the chair of our local service user voices group for maternity and neonates, and Donna's been very much working at my side, glued to me throughout all of this, to make sure that all communication that we share with our service users and our staff and is right, and is what people understand, and is accessible, and we continue to work hourly on updating what that looks like as well. So it's really been a key focus for us to help our service users through the whole transition, and to support our staff to do the same.
Thank you. But you can see my point that it happened to me. I didn't get any communication, and it became a national story, and still Yeovil never spoke to me. I know this is in the past, but it feels like history's repeated itself.
I think that what happened to you is a different situation, but it's a not uncommon situation across maternity services across the country. But there's lots of work being done to try and reduce that, because we recognise it's really it's not what you expect when you book somewhere to deliver.
Yeah, it's a different time, but it's still the maternity unit closing the day before I'm due to go in to be induced to give birth. So it's the same, to me it feels the same.
Leanne, do you want to add something?
Morning everyone, my name is Leanne Ashmead. I'm the Service Group Director for Children, Young People and Families at
Somerset Foundation Trust. I just wanted to add as well on that women and birthing people access piece. This is critically important, and another thing that we've done to provide support to these affected women is to set up a specific dedicated helpline with partners from the ICB. So that number is published in our communications, and if women have any queries at all about the service changes, they can contact that line and we'll receive contact back from us as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. There is water if one of your team want to get you any, because you're doing a lot of talking and we appreciate it. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it probably was a shock for a lot of people that a maternity unit is shut with 7 days' notice. And yet, reading the report that is in front of us, Yeovil barely is mentioned. And we're told how wonderful the improvements are that you've made, as process-driven as they are. So I would like to know, why have things got so bad at Yeovil that we now have to close it? And an indication maybe on page 29, where you briefly describe Musgrove Park Hospital, and you are precise on what the facilities are there, and you seem precise, or you're not actually, you say approximately 3,000 babies were born at Musgrove, 1,200 were born at Yeovil, approximately. Why do we not have exact numbers? And there seems to be sort of much more vagueness in a description of Yeovil's facilities. Interestingly enough, nearly 20 years ago, I was classed as a prima gravida, which in plain English means an old bag with a bump, and I gave birth to my daughter just short of my 45th birthday. So obviously I needed an extra level of care, and a midwife-led unit was definitely not an option. I had really good treatment at Musgrove. Yes, the facilities were crumbling even 20 years ago, but the goodwill and the glue of the staff held it all together. So I really cannot complain. Plus, I was also sent to Honiton for that very important postnatal recuperative care. And I wonder now, with the extra pressure that's going to go on Musgrove, because we haven't got Hotel Honiton anymore, that's what we called it, because the service there was fantastic, unbelievably good. And it seems for a G7 country that, and it's shocking really, that the standards have gone down within 20 years. I had a really good experience, even though potentially it could have ended in disaster for both of us. And that this doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Why on earth, despite all these triages and this wonderful report telling us how good you are at getting things back on track from an inadequate unit, what's happened at Yeovil? Why has this happened? Why have things been allowed to get to this point? If staff are going off stressed, what is being done to support them and alleviate that stress, or even go for supported use? And the comment that Yeovil is a small unit, so it's a bit more tricky recruiting staff. Well, you were telling us that about the stroke unit, and look what happened there. So I think I want an assurance that this unit is not going to be closed permanently, and a timeline for what actions you are taking to get it back on track. And if you don't do it in 6 months because you use the word initial, when are you going to open it? We really need to know about this. And also, you know, the estate of Musgrove does not give you much confidence that it's going to cope with an extra 1,200 births a year clattering in its direction, because it's quite difficult to get to Bath, and it's also not particularly easy to get to Dorchester. For those people that are planned around giving birth at Yeovil, there's a reason, and some of that can be family connection, as well as the confidence you have in different units. I think the impact of this on young mums, I think the impact postnatally could be quite profound. And I do hope that the community midwife team will be briefed and supported, because they will probably find themselves having to give a lot of extra care to those very new mums who will have been sent home perhaps sooner than they should have been, simply because of the extra numbers there. So I think that's something I want assurance on, that this isn't a slippery slope to closure, which I'm sure will have gone through people's minds. And also, why have things been allowed to get so bad? You had your CQC in November 23. Why was Yeovil inspected again? I'm assuming it's January 25 because you haven't stated the year in the report. You've just said January. Well, that could be any January within the last plus or minus 100 years, to be honest. I think there's a lot there, but I'd like to know why we got to this point, what happened, what went wrong, and I think people need to know that.
Thank you. There's a lot in that, and so I will pick out some of the bits, but I know my colleagues Sally and James are going to come in and join as well. I think the first thing to be really clear about is that you're mixing two different reports. So what was on this agenda to talk about next is the improvements we made following the CQC inspection of maternity and obstetric services, which was 18 months ago. What we've been talking about today is children's services. So the CQC come in and do separate inspections of specific services. So when the maternity and obstetrics was reviewed, that was as part of a national process where they went through all maternity and obstetric units. The CQC came to inspect the children's services, and literally just the children's services, both at Yeovil and Musgrove Park in January. And that was because they were aware that there were concerns, because we as a trust had identified soon after the merger that there were significant issues, and have been trying to work with the staff at Yeovil to address those issues subsequently. So they are separate things. So we have made significant improvements, which is good, because that means that we can be assured that actually we can support these extra women, those that are appropriate to come to Musgrove. You mentioned that for some, that is not, that won't, all of them won't choose to go to Musgrove. Some of them will choose to go to Bath or Dorchester, depending where they live. The issues have developed over a long period of time. You talked about the standards of care, and I would challenge that actually we're constantly pushing forward on expected standards of care. And they change, and they are from professional bodies, so Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, or Royal College of Obstetrics, as well as the CQC. And every trust, however big, however much volume of patients are going through, are expected to meet certain standards, and those standards are continuously improving and changing as our sort of knowledge and expectations change. So how a unit works 1 year, 5 or 10 years later might be very different. And some of the challenges that we are seeing around the expectation that a consultant is present in the evening when it's busy is different than it was 15 years ago, when actually consultants generally were just on call from home. And that's why you need more staff, more consultant staff present to do that. So that's one of the key issues that we've been really trying to work on, is how we shift the working patterns of some of the senior doctors. I'm going to pass on because there's lots of other bits in there, and Sally and then James will comment on those.
I just want to add a bit of context. You refer to the report, and there isn't a huge amount of mention of Yeovil around the improvements we made. The maternity services, as we run them, we run them the Somerset Foundation Trust, so we have a number of staff that work across both units and across the community. So when the report refers to some of the key lines of inquiries CQC picked up in our maternity inspection around governance, training, audit, all of those things, we work as cross-site teams. We're approaching the response to all of the work we've done of that as one, which is why it's not particularly Yeovil or Musgrove. The reason that Musgrove is probably mentioned more in that report is a lot of the CQC challenges around the estate on Musgrove. So there's been a huge amount of work on estates, facility and security on that site, but everything else is across the whole of our maternity and obstetric services, not site specific. Just wanted to add that context to help understand the paper.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to councillor Bailey, please.
I've got a light, actually. Shout if you like.
Can you use the next one?
Can you use the one Sue was using?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
That's all. Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I think most of my questions have been answered, but I just wanted to clarify. So the issue is really about the availability of staff, which has been on the radar for some time. And it reached a crescendo or an emergency situation when you got to the point where people were ill. And so that forced a temporary closure for 6 months. Okay, fine. Two questions then. I thought one of the points of having more integrated hospitals, Musgrove, whatever, Dorchester, and we talked about the stroke situation here, is that these issues would be able to be covered by sort of cross-party lines, if you like. And that doesn't seem to come in too much. That's the first point. And therefore one is concerned about how that will work in other areas as well. And on a personal basis, I can't speak about pregnancy, but certainly you find that when I try to talk to Yeovil Hospital in Musgrove, they have very similar, different IT systems and they can't talk to each other. So on a very basic principle, I can't see why or how they're going to work together. That's the first point. The second one is really what can we do in this situation and how can we help the people who are going to find it very difficult to get longer distances to cover that distance and in what might be an emergency situation, I guess, a bit like the stroke, and not a planned. Could be planned, could be emergency. And how can we organise some sort of transport system that would allow people to draw on that? That's part of my second question. The other one is if things improve before 6 months, will you open before 6 months? Reopen before 6 months? Thank you.
Thank you. There's some really good questions in there. And I'm going to take us off topic because just very slightly to give an example where we are really have got some examples where it's an integrated trust. We have done really well. So critical care, the first thing that when we merged as an organisation, and I say we, I haven't actually started in the role at that point, that critical care was in a very similar position where there wasn't enough staff to cover the rotas. We've managed to attract staff to Somerset Foundation Trust, which has allowed us to free up some of the consultants from Musgrove Park to go and deliver the service on the Yeovil site as well. So that's absolutely our ambition as an integrated trust, to look at how we work better together. And cardiology recently have done something very similar where they've been able to recruit. We are as a trust absolutely looking at how we support Yeovil paediatrics. We already have our service group leadership team, some of whom are here. Geeta, the Associate Medical Director for Paediatrics, isn't here today, but her role is across site, and we're looking at some of the leadership roles across site as well. But also more importantly, there are a team who are going to Yeovil over the next few weeks to help support some of that modernisation of the delivery of services for children. But we're also looking at how we do that to support the neonates and the special care. But as I sort of said earlier, that's a slightly more tricky thing because Musgrove is bigger and they have separate rotas. The general paediatricians are not able to cross cover both the children's services and the special care. And at the very sharp end, the skills that you need to resuscitate a very sick baby are, a bit like being an anaesthetist for a very sick baby. And when you're not doing that very often, it's very difficult to keep those skills up. And this alludes to one of the problems that we talked about attracting staff to units where there are not a high number of deliveries, and you're expected very occasionally to use your most tricky skills very occasionally. And that's the big challenge in how we can best support these services, and hence why we made the decision that we made. Some good news. We do, so at the moment, we absolutely have a joint system for maternity with the Badgernet system. So that is a joint system. We've been working really hard, pushing really hard to have an electronic health record across our organisation. And we have now got the first stage of national approval. We're going to have an electronic health record across Dorset and Somerset. And so that is some good news, but that's a couple of years away. But we absolutely recognise that need, and we recognise that we need to be able to access records wherever a patient is seen. So we're on a positive step there, but there's just a little bit to go yet. I can see James is desperate to talk.
Well, I was just going to add in, because I'm a doctor that works on both sides, and I have done as a consultant for 12 years, and the numbers of medical professionals and other clinicians that work on both sides rapidly is increasing with the merger, and only the merger has allowed us to do that. From a personal point of view, I can absolutely agree with you about the IT, because it's hard, and I find that on my daily basis that interacting with different systems is difficult, and we worry about that from a patient safety point of view. And that's always been the top of the agenda from the merger, and many other trusts across the country are similar. But if I may, I just wanted to bring you back to one of your points, and the first point that Councillor Osborne brought up, because I think it really sums up a lot of what our staff and our service users are thinking, that this is a maternity problem, and that's become the headline. And it's really, we're really clear that this is a concern around safety and staffing as part of that, but concern around safety flagged up this year by many, including CQC, around paediatrics and neonatal care. And to help that problem in safety, we have to take the steps to reduce the load and focus the paediatric care on the core paediatric. We have 10,500 children attending A&E in Yeovil for children and young people, and it's clearly imperative that we support that service as much as possible. And as part of that, and because neonatal care is really difficult and really specialised, that's one of the things that we feel at this time we have to take away temporarily to ensure we can really focus on that core paediatric service. And obviously, because of the way things are, that has a very significant knock-on on our maternity colleagues. And we really feel for our maternity colleagues, and we're feeling this every day, that it does feel like sometimes the maternity being blamed for this, when there have been really big strides in maternity. Our maternity staff, our obstetric staff on both sides of the county have worked so hard since that CQC report, and continue to do so in a very tied up manner. And this has come as a real blow for them, but it's absolutely vital to keep core paediatrics safe. And unfortunately, this is one of the temporary things we have to do to try and do that.
Thank you. I was just going to add as well, one of the other things that's been brought up about working across the trust is around the governance processes and systems. And so that's again where we've been absolutely supporting Somerset-wide processes for governance that have been led from the Musgrove side to support Yeovil, because they were struggling with that. So that's another example where we are really trying to work across the trust and use the strengths. You know, I'm using the strengths of both sides sometimes. So, you know, actually we're trying to use the strengths and bring those together.
Thank you very much.
Sure, can I just pick up the last question, which I don't think's been asked?
Quickly.
Well, it was just about access, really. That whilst this situation is going on, people will have problems getting to, I'd like to say that our public transport was excellent and it was running all the time, but it isn't. And I know if there's an emergency, there'll be an ambulance probably tips up, or a car or something, but it's just, how do we bridge the gap? Because that appears to be the situation. Hopefully, what you say, and I should have said, sorry, I forgot my manners, thank you for the service you do provide, by the way, because I was just feeling there's a bit of a grilling going on here, which is certainly not my intention, is how we get people in the situation to where they need to be from where they're not going to now. You see, rather complicated sentence structure there. Sorry.
I'll tell you, thank you completely. That's been our priority since news broke, and we had to share this really difficult message with our staff and our service users. And like I said, our community midwives have personally called every single person that they're providing care for. They already know them because they know them well anyway, but have identified any families that we might need to wrap around differently. We've got a number of people, local people, charities coming forward to say, can we help? And we're just working through some of those offers. But absolutely, if we've really focused that. I can't answer exactly what we're doing for every family, but that is an absolute priority and is the first thing on the midwives' minds, not anything to do with them or how this might affect them. They're worrying about their women and their families. So it's absolutely been our priority.
And we're also working with SWAS, so South West Ambulance Service as well, and they are aware of these changes. And are aware that there may be some increased calls, that if there is no other way of a woman getting to hospital, she will need to call 999 and SWAS will come to her aid.
Thank you very much.
A small plug, if I may, for the volunteer car situation, which is in Yeovil, which I'm not sure whether you've accessed, but I can give you the details. I'm sure you have.
Thank you.
Okay, just before I go to the next speaker, I just wanted to say, I think there's one thing, I think we talked about data, shared data. If only we could get the powers that be to sit at IT and give one computer that works for everywhere, for the police, for the doctors, for hospitals, for everyone. Do you know what? Life would be so much easier. You've got 3,000 births at Musgrove, you've got 1,200 at Yeovil per year, you've got 1,200 people. Percentage-wise, there could be 600 in 6 months. And this is why, so apologies, it doesn't mean to be a grilling, it's just real worry, and we can tell that you're worried as well. So we do thank you for answering every question. You're doing a great job. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Stanton now, please.
Thank you, Jill. It's difficult as a man asking about these things. It's over 50 years since my children were born, and 6 years since my last grandchild was born in Yeovil Hospital, as it happens, and the service was very good. So firstly, thank you for the very full and clear answers you're giving us. Very helpful. I wanted to just understand, I think you said you're proposing during the closure period to do some refitting and upgrading. It'd be useful to know what that will be, and particularly whether that will make it easier to attract paediatricians and other staff to Yeovil. You know, is it partly a question of the facilities being good enough for them? The second question is about, obviously you can't judge your confidence level of finding the right staff and the right consultants, and you can't really judge when people come back off the sick list, but it would be useful to hear what plan there is to make sure that when you reopen, let's assume in 6 months' time, the right mix of staff is available. And the last question really came up from one of the answers you gave just now about the size of the Yeovil facility. I mean, is this an opportunity to sort of help the problem by making the Yeovil facility bigger so that it's not struggling as a small unit?
So I think what we really hope, so one of the key things that we need to do is some modernisation of our paediatric services, the way that children are seen. So this is a culture change as well. I think it's different ways of working, which the team on the Musgrove site have been doing for quite some time, but the team on the Yeovil site have had more traditional, old-fashioned consultant ways of working, and so that's what's really tricky, because we're trying to get people to see a very different way of working, and so we need to bring in more people to work alongside to show them how it can be done, and this will have big advantages for children and parents and families. At the moment, lots of children come to our ED and sit in our very crowded ED in Yeovil. Actually, if you had a paediatric assessment unit, the children that are referred by the GPs could come there. They should be seen very early by consultants, have a period of observation and discharged really quickly. Emergency department, sorry, A&E, yeah. So there's getting established a paediatric assessment unit, getting consultants or senior clinicians, advanced nurse practitioners, seeing children quickly when they arrive, making decisions about their treatment, whether they can stay in or whether they can go home. So there's some of the really key things that we need to work through. And also, looking at outpatients and where children are seen in outpatients and that we're supporting them. So the children in the different specialty groups, but also the general. So there's a lot of work around just trying to sort of modernise ways of working to make sure that they are what we want for all of our children and families. So that's the key bit. And then the recruitment bit, we really need to make these jobs for Somerset Foundation Trust, because we've got a huge opportunity being Somerset Foundation Trust, which is acute community mental health. We've got some really good examples of excellent working that we've got with our child and adolescent mental health services that are second to none in the country, and so we need to do that for the rest of our services. So our safeguarding teams and other specialist roles, how they really work across Somerset so that those jobs are more attractive, and so we are able to recruit Somerset. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything else to what I've said there. Not to that.
No, all right, well, let's just move on.
Madam Chair, one question wasn't answered.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yes,
I was
there's an
wondering,
opportunity to
yeah.
make the unit bigger.
So that's tricky, I think, because with the births the births are actually declining in Somerset. I think we've probably got too many inpatient beds in Yeovil. We don't need the number of inpatient beds that we've got. And you can't really, I think you need to right size things and right model things. And actually it's about children being cared for as close to home as possible. And there's lots of other things that we can do with primary care as well. When everybody's got headspace, there's a lot of work across the country where we can support primary care to look after children. So I think it's making the right model that's really exciting and modern.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs, please.
Thank you very much. I still like the assurance. I'm not sure its answer is this unit definitely given to reopen. I assume it would do is looking at updating. And also some things you say, we need to do this, we need to do that. If you're aware of some of these situations rising around modernising different ways of working, it sounds a bit like since the report, the stable door is shut and you're acting afterwards. Would as the lead clinician or lead officer or whatever, however your class, sorry, should these things not have been acted on before you had the report in January? Sorry to be critical, but it sounds like maybe some of these things should have been in your lead role acted on, so preemptive. Thank you.
I started the role in April last year, and by the end of April, we had set up a paediatric quality improvement group where the CQC came to that group, and we, and NHS England and our ICB colleagues, as well as all the appropriate professionals. And we've been working we identified these challenges ourselves. It was with our new leadership. It was the Associate Medical Director, Geeta, who had identified these issues as soon as she started in her role as an Associate Medical Director. And so we've been very much the first stage of any kind of culture change, different way of working, is to try and bring people with you. And that's absolutely what we've been doing. And we've made really good progress. We've got some fantastic nurses who have really grasped that opportunity to work as a trust and have been doing a brilliant job. And there are some things that we've really made progress on, but then there's just a core nutty area that we've had struggled with, and it's been difficult. So we absolutely did grapple the nettle and have continued to do so. And we were trying to do things collaboratively with people that weren't so dramatic, because it's not where we wanted to be, and we wanted to avoid this situation. You asked the second bit or the first bit. I can't quite remember what you said. So
I think what we do like here, will this unit definitely reopen?
Yeah.
I'd just like a yes or no answer to that, because I know the MP asked this question as well, and I think I didn't. My area is on amended, so people who go to maternity for me go to Bath. But I think many members in this room who represent people who use this unit. I'd like a yes or no answer to that one, please.
Yeah.
I think it's been avoided so far.
No, so I haven't avoided it, and I certainly did radio and 2 TV interviews yesterday, and I was really clear that we can't give you a yes or no answer on that. We can't give you assurance at this stage whether it will reopen in 6 months or at what point. We have to absolutely make sure that we hit the appropriate criteria for it to be safe to reopen. And we will be continuously reviewing it. There isn't a hidden agenda that we're not going to reopen it, but we do absolutely need to make sure that we can hit key criteria and that it's safe to do so. So we are saying that we will do a formal review. NHS England will hold us to a formal review anyway. And when I leave here, I'm then going into a meeting to talk to NHS England about this. But we will have a meeting in 3 months and 6 months formal review points. But we need to keep reviewing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It must be horrible being put on the spot by us lot. So I do appreciate how hard your job is. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Councillor Oates, did you indicate, I got you down as 7, but I wasn't sure if you had just looked at me.
I always look at you, Chair.
Oh, thank you.
And I would like to speak after the member, after.
Oh, all right, I've got you down as 7. You can speak now or later.
Whenever you're ready.
You can speak now, Councillor Oates. Councillor Oates is the portfolio holder for public health and climate environment. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues, I suppose, for coming. Just to clarify, I am the lead member for public health. I'm also a nurse. I trained at Yeovil. I worked at the MAT unit. 2 of my children were born there, and my daughter was born in Musgrove. I'll give you a clue, which is the much better MAT unit, and it's not the one built by the Americans. Thank you so much this morning, because you've clarified a great deal of what's been going on and where we are. I'd like to be positive in my comments, but it's going to be quite challenging to do that, because when I started looking into this issue, because I was at a public meeting and I forgot to say, about ambulances, members on this committee when I had a heart attack, was taking me over, stent at Musgrove, brilliant. I lay on the floor for an hour with a heart attack, waiting for an ambulance. So let's rule out ambulances moving people to MAT units. Okay, that's not the solution. And that's less than a year ago. So the ambulance service in Somerset, not fit for purpose yet. So it isn't your solution, but there are solutions. I'm sure working together we can find them. When I was asked at a public meeting about it, and I was totally unaware that it was coming because the communication on this, I think, was poor. For me to be asked in public what's happening about the MAT unit closing, and I had to just say I don't know. That was embarrassing. But what I also think is slightly awkward is the conversation we've been having this morning has been talking like there was a car crash, that something went wrong. And yet, in the autumn of 2023, from the MAT unit's point of view, the senior management of the hospital must have been aware that there were serious issues, because we've all read the report that looked at the MAT unit that was in November 23, and there is a long list of problems for both hospitals, for both Taunton and Yeovil. But focusing on Yeovil at the moment, it came out as inadequate. Now, what you also don't know about me is that over the years I've worked as a turnaround manager. So I've gone into businesses, care homes primarily, that have been in that position and had 3 months to turn them around. You've had the luxury of considerably longer. You wouldn't be allowed that in the private sector. And yet, not all those issues have been addressed. What would have been useful for us, for the Scrutiny Committee, would be actually, even if it was in private, a detailed sharing of the action plan that's going on for the maternity issue. Now, what you've clarified this morning is that actually the MAT unit's fine. MAT units come on, there's still issues, but we can take your word for it that it's in a good position. What the problem is a small number of doctors. I'm thinking 3 or 4 people are not available to make this system work. And the doctors in the Musgrove are employed one way, and the doctors in Yeovil, the old-fashioned way, where they were more flexible. That seems to be the position as I understand it. One of your colleagues has announced that for 12 years he's been working on both sides, which is brilliant. But there doesn't seem to have been the flexibility there or the capacity to solve this problem. What I'm struggling to understand is why the decision, why this problem has been addressed in this way. If you don't have enough staff for providing a vital service, you get them, and you weren't getting them. They were just locums who were expensive. I fully appreciate that, but locums not the best thing in the world, but the NHS relies on locums. So how have we got to the point where a problem that you knew about a year ago, when someone just said about a year ago these issues were identified, after about a year, you haven't solved it. And you're unwilling to say in 6 months' time, you will reopen it. You won't give that guarantee. I think you have to give that guarantee, partly for the staff and partly for the people in my area, which is right near the hospital. All the mothers who are very anxious at the moment have to be given the guarantee you're going to do that, because that's your job. You are there to provide these services, not, oh, we've got a problem, we'll close it. But there's a side of me that says if it was Taunton, that wouldn't have happened because of the stroke, because we know what's happened there. So there's a lack of trust in Yeovil and what's going on there. I'm going to that. What I would like us to do is to see if the solution, if it is operating as well as it was, but we have this issue around these doctors, is the number like 4? Have we shut a mat unit for the lack of 4 doctors? If this is the case, if that is true, what should, and all the other things I understand, the change of culture, and it's all to be welcomed. I like modernisation, I like better services, I like far more person-centred care. I'm totally on board with all of it. Is this really down to 4 doctors? Have we closed the mat unit because we cannot recruit 4 doctors to come and live and work in the most beautiful county in the country?
Thank you, Councillor Oakes. If you don't mind answering some of those questions, quite extensive. Just to let members know, we have 3 speakers and 1 online afterwards. So we have really grilled Dr. Ours very, very well. And just need to know that we've got 4 speakers left now to speak, okay? Plus me.
Yeah, so the reason we've made the decision that we've made is because we recognise that we need to de-risk. We need to reduce the risk of things going wrong at the moment while we put things right, if that makes sense. And we've been banging our head against a wall in one direction. It's not worked, so we're stopping banging our head and looking, you know, how we can address things differently. We have been employing locums and covering shifts, but that reduces risks but adds risk. So, you know, we absolutely need to do something now to de-risk. You know, and there's lots of things that we are doing, working across both sites. We're identifying women who are higher risk, and so and arranging for them to be delivered on the Musgrove site. We are starting to look at children who are the ones that probably need a little bit more support. We've got the Musgrove team doing the safeguarding reviews. So it's not as simple as for the want of recruiting 4 doctors. We've got to make a unit that 4 doctors want to work in, and we've got to work with the doctors that we have at the moment to get to where we need to be.
Sorry, are you suggesting it's easier to recruit doctors to a closed unit than an operating one that's evolving? That's an unusual approach to management. I'm not used to it.
I don't know if I've got a sensible comment to make about that, because I think we talked about recruiting doctors to Somerset Foundation Trust, and we talked about colleagues from Musgrove coming to support. And we've talked about creating a culture. We need to create a culture and a model of care that people want to work in.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just go back and having been through A&E, I mean, Yeovil does not have a minor injuries unit. A paediatric assessment unit would be an excellent idea. And I would be very surprised if there is a single Somerset councillor who's not 100% behind those changes. We want you to do them whilst operating, and it is possible. That site's been a building site for years, and local people have put a lot of money into supporting the hospital and continue to do so.
Yes,
So we want to keep working in partnership on this, even if we challenge you.
yeah. So urgent treatment centre, we hope it's going to open soon. I think there's some building works in process that got a bit delayed, but we are hoping certainly before this winter to have an urgent treatment centre alongside the ED, which will just give more at the accident emergency department, which will give more space and be an improvement. So absolutely, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I go now to Councillor Power, please?
Thank you very much. I just want to touch a bit more, and I think I know you've touched a little bit on the ambulances and the emergency services. But back in 2001, when I was actually born in Yeovil Hospital, so I think I'm the most recent one to be born in Yeovil Hospital in this room. Unfortunately, as always being an awkward child as I was, my mum had to have an emergency C-section. And where I live in Wincanton, I represent quite a rural area. It's just with the ambulance times, because it still takes about half an hour to get to Yeovil. And luckily, my mum was actually in Yeovil giving birth to me when I did get stuck. But if she was having a home birth, for example, or it just happened, as an emergency, that's obviously going to put a bit more pressure on our ambulance services. So how can you reassure us as a committee and also the people listening out there that you have thought this through and what your plans are to sort this issue out? Thank you.
Yeah, so recognise there's an issue in the southwest with ambulance response times across the country, but also know that the southwest is particularly challenged, and you will know that this is something that's really high on everybody's agenda to try and get this improved, and we all know that it's not acceptable. And there's constantly changes to demands on ambulances because of how services are delivered. And we are working with them and giving them lots of notice. And again, it's making sure that the ambulances are called for the right situations as well, and when there are other things that we can do to make sure that we're not using the 999 ambulances needlessly. And that's other work that we're doing as a trust around call before you convey, and our for our older population, which are the main users of the 999 ambulances, so hospital at home and virtual wards and all other kinds of things that we are doing to try and limit the use of ambulance services. I get talking to them early, letting them know of these changes, and again sort of putting the number of women who will absolutely need to call 999 for an emergency transfer. I mean, I'm not a midwife, but you do get some notice that you're in labour. We will be we will be sharing that with women, and women who are in rural areas will want to be contacting the maternity units earlier on when they're in labour rather than later on, so that they can travel safely earlier on. I'm sure Sally's got more sensible things to say around that, but I think it's minimising the use of ambulance services to when we absolutely need to, and educating and supporting women earlier on in labour.
Just add a little bit of reassurance. Well, we have a 24-hour triage line for Somerset families for any woman or their family to call at any time, which is manned by a midwife. So anybody with any queries or concerns about themselves, their pregnancy or their baby, they all have this number, and the midwife on the phone will advise them. So if anybody is not used to a travel time and they call, they will get advice, and the midwife then can call an ambulance if that's what they feel is appropriate. But also it's very much part of the conversation that the community midwives are having with everybody on their caseload so that they can understand what the impact might be of additional travel times, and to identify if there's anything we need to do to support them with access.
Thank you. We're just so grateful that Tim's mum was in Yeovil when she gave birth. I mean, how lucky was that? You wouldn't be here today. So there we are. Thank you.
I was just going to say, I'm feeling really old because my youngest daughter was 26 yesterday. I'm feeling really old.
Well, can I actually tell you, I had my daughter in good old American built Musgrove 50 years ago, 2 weeks time. And I was told then, oh, the hospital's in a bad way, we're going to have a new one. So poor old Musgrove, actually, bless their hearts, are still doing a great job. So we just need to, it doesn't always mean it's about the building, but it would be nice for Musgrove. So can I go now to Councillor Pearlston, please?
Thank you. I'd like to talk about the staff. So the midwifery staff, you've suggested a midwife-led service. Can I just ask, first of all, just to be absolutely clear, you are standing down the midwifery staff?
No, not at all.
So what is happening to the midwifery staff?
So at the moment, we've had to break this news to our midwifery staff, which has been the hardest day of my career. I can be completely honest with you about that. And so we need that to sink in and people to process. The staff are going through a grieving process. We do need every single member of our staff. It's not just the midwives, support workers, our admin staff, our volunteers, everybody that makes the maternity unit work. And we know that we have additional needs that we now need to wrap around the communities of Yeovil. So absolutely, those essential members of staff will be able to help us enhance what we can offer at this time. And we also know that we're going to need staff in different places now. So we do need to uplift some of the staffing models on the Musgrove site to be able to respond to the additional activity. What we're currently working through with our staff is there are a number of people that are, tell me where to go and I will go, I will do anything, because all they care about is continuing to deliver the amazing care that they're so passionate and they deliver every day. And that's great, but we've got a number of staff that are still grieving and are really struggling. So it's a delicate balance around wrapping around those staff, making sure that we support them, making sure that they're clear what their choices look like. And some of that is working with our neighbouring units. Some of our staff live closer to Dorchester, for example, Salisbury Fast. So I've been having conversations with directors of midwifery in all of those units to understand if there's opportunities for our staff to potentially offer some work to them. But every single member of staff is going to be absolutely essential to making this work. And they're all very, although distressed, really, that is the priority for them, that they continue to offer the care.
I very much appreciate that the staff that work in that field are, all nurses are amazing, but there's something super special about midwives and what they're able to do and how they do it. My story is an impressive story as well. And I thank Musgrove for saving my life. So you will likely get unexpected emergency deliveries turn up at A&E. So will you be retaining some of the staff within the hospital that may be able to be called in some way to be able to go through with certain deliveries that may turn up that's inappropriate to move? You can't just say, sorry, your water's broke, you've only got a few minutes to go, but we're going to ship you somewhere else. That's not a reasonable thing to do. So will there still be an available option for those occurrences?
So there are a number of midwifery or obstetric services that will remain open and business as usual on the Yeovil site, and that is the antenatal clinic, all the scanning, all the screening services. So in day hours, working hours, there will be a presence should anything be required. But we do always, every emergency department will have a number of women for whatever reason that turn up and have a baby in the emergency department, and the staff there are quite used to that. Usually, if a baby's coming that quickly, they don't need a midwife, they just need a towel and a cuddle, which is fabulous. But that said, we are working really closely with our emergency department staff so that they understand and they know who to call, how to communicate, so that we can keep people safe. We did consider maintaining the midwifery presence, as we mentioned earlier, so that we can support birth, but that is a risky thing for the midwives and the women, and we didn't want to send confusing messages that actually you can still arrive and expect the same level of care, because that puts those families at risk and the staff at risk as well. So we have considered it really a lot. It's difficult, but we'll continue to review it and take feedback from the staff, from service users and events.
My last question or point is, you suggested earlier elective surgeries, C-sections. as a consideration, and that the support won't necessarily be there from a full midwifery team. Having gone that, not elective, gone through that route, several days in hospital afterwards would require that sort of specialist midwifery care. So I'm not entirely sure that elective C-sections are wise at this moment in time, which is also sad.
Shall I just come in? So I personally have a problem with calling elective cesarean sections. That suggests there's an element of choice. And of course there is choice, but for most people it's more of a planned cesarean section birth. So that has always been and will always continue to be an option for anybody having a baby. Usually people who have what we call an elective cesarean section are having it for medical reasons. We continue to offer that, and what we do is move that service in its entirety to the Musgrave site, where we already do elective cesarean sections, and we're busy working at the moment with a huge team of people on the Musgrave site to increase our capacity so that we can absorb the activity on the elective cesarean section list over onto the Musgrave site. Does that help?
Absolutely, thank you. And my last point is, what is you able to do to encourage more amazing mums to be to home birth? And is there midwifery capacity from the staff currently?
Absolutely, and a passionate team of midwives that have been established in a home birth team, serving the Yeovil community for many years and continue to do so. And we've also now got a Musgrave side of the county home birth team, and they both work very closely together because, of course, we have a number of women that live in the kind of Ilminster child window. So we have an SFT home birth team. We've just done some active recruitment into that team, so it's grown, and we're encouraging more midwives to work in that way, because it is a very different way of working out there in the community on your own, sometimes in places with no phone signal, I can tell you, because I was community midwife for many years. And so it's absolutely one of the areas of service delivery that we are enhancing for the staff, but also for our service users. And we're seeing an increase in demand for home birth, which is fabulous, because that's, you want to be at home, don't you?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councillor Preston. As you can tell, we are really concerned about the staff as well. You don't have to answer me, but just wanted to say, I'm really pleased to hear that they can go to other areas. Then, midwifery staff is brilliant. What you don't want to do is lose them. So, you know what I mean? So just need to keep that in board as well. Okay, Councillor Trimnell is going to give just a very short, before we go to obviously Councillor Munt and our MP. So if we can make this short, Councillor Trimnell.
Yes, I try to be known for my brevity. My first question is, are we taking the actual agenda item, because there's not been much discussion around that today, should we move that to a separate meeting so that we can give that the airtime that it needs? That's my first bit of my question.
Can I answer that? I think in light of today, I think that it would be wrong. Forgive me for those that have come to talk about the next item. I think what we'll do is we'll move the next item on to, because you won't get the levity that you deserve. Here we are talking about the downside, and then we're going to say the positives. I think we need to have it separate on a separate day. Okay, so is that all you needed to ask? No, sorry.
No, sorry. It's just what occurred to me as we went on, and nobody's asking questions about that quite rightly and quite fairly. Just what I wanted to know, the final thing was that on page 34 of the report, paragraph 5.1, details some sort of inherent issues at Musgrave Hospital in terms of the building and things that you cannot repair without huge investment and huge change. And I just wondered whether it was felt that the hospital would be able to cope with increasing numbers of birthing women, and also how are you going to manage those numbers in terms of, are you going to be advising people in different localities to go to Dorchester or Bath or Musgrave, or is there going to be full choice? And therefore, because I mean, very quickly I was induced, and then they bussed in thousands of women from somewhere else, and then I couldn't be progressed, and I had to wait, and that was fine, and it was no trauma or anything. But will you have space in Musgrave to manage all of the people that might be coming in? And I say Musgrave just because it seems that's constrained.
Shall I answer the space question, and I'm going to refer back to Sally about the choice question, because I just want to make sure I get the wording right for that. But in terms of space, you are right. The Musgrave maternity building is old, and it has physical restraints in it because of buildings built in that generation. And healthcare buildings, all buildings, but healthcare buildings especially, are incredibly expensive. and getting national funding to change some of that estate. And as you know, through the new hospital programme that we applied for, the women and children's replacement for that was right at the forefront of SFT's bid to do that. Let's start the immediate term, i.e. from next week. We are confident that we have been able to relocate on the site safely to accommodate the extra workload coming across over from the east side of the county, absolutely. And our colleagues in our other surgical directorates and the surgical director and the medical directorate have all worked with us to make sure that this is the priority for the trust this week, to make sure that when the additional need from the east side of the county comes over, we can make sure that on the west side of the county we've got the appropriate space for them. So we are confident in that process, yes. In the medium term, we need to keep pushing and we need your help to keep pushing that national agenda to make sure that our women and children's facilities in Somerset stay at the top of that, and we keep pushing that forward.
Very quickly, because I think that was going to be another bit. What can we as a committee do to support this? And that's something that I wanted just to mention. But I think so.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So yeah, I'm Donna. I'm the Senior Lead for Maternity in the Innovative Voices Partnership. I am a service user. I'm not a professional. I've had 3 pregnancies and 2 babies in Somerset. Those 2 children have been neglected with pizza and after school childcare this week, as I've sat alongside these people to make sure that the service user voice, the layperson perspective and what people are feeling and talking about in the local community comes directly into the decisions and the design going forward. The personalised care choices is at the heart of our agenda, and the priorities for those people who are likely to be most vulnerable is really important. Thank you for sharing your experience. I think it hits a little bit harder when it triggers a memory. Dads and partners, birthing people, non-birthing people are really important. And everybody has and I was talking to Mike then, because he said that I don't matter, and actually you do, but everybody here has probably got an experience, and it's really important that that comes back to what we're doing. And believe you me, I make sure that these people come back to that person-centered approach for staff and for service users. I also want to say that I'm really aware that I sit here and I come across and I look like a privileged person, a white woman who talks the way I do, looks the way I do. But actually I do a lot of hard work to educate myself, to train, to research, to listen to people who are the most vulnerable and likely to have the poorest outcomes. And I think at the heart of this, if we can improve care for those people and we educate ourselves and we find out what life is like for those people, we will improve care for everybody. And sometimes I think the noise maybe, as I say, or trying to look at everybody's experience, sometimes you've got to take a helicopter view and say, actually, personalised care, good communication, informed decision-making is at the heart for those people and for everybody who's pregnant or having babies right now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I think we all agree. We've all got life experiences. My husband sat and ate sandwiches when I was in labour. So, we've all got it, haven't we? Okay, so I think we're now going to move to Councillor Munt, and it was our MP as well, who's been very, very patiently waiting, and I thank you for that. So if you'd like to speak now, Councillor Munt.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me all right?
Super, yeah, good.
Okay, good. Okay, fine. Thank you very much indeed. As you'll appreciate, this is not just going to affect people in and around Yeovil. It also affects Wells and the villages and hamlets around Wells. Particularly acutely, people will feel this because there's very poor public transport and almost no buses. And of course, we don't have a station. So I think there are some difficulties that may not have been identified or recognised at this point. I wanted to thank also Melanie Isles and Sally Bryant for their input, but I just want to clarify 1 or 2 points that were raised in the paper and in the presentation. There are some gaps in my knowledge. It was stated that there would be a review in 3 months or 6 months. I wondered which it was. Recognising that CQC, so the Section 29A report, the warning notice under the Health and Social Care Act 2006, that was November 23. Then you got Section 31 warning notice under the Health and Social Care 2008, which was December 23, as I understand, and 3 inspection reports. I think I can see clearly that there was reference to 92% of the actions having been completed since November 23. I wondered what was left in that 8% of actions that are outstanding, and what the plan is and what the timescale is for the completion of that 8%. I wondered about what kind of risk assessments had been shared with the council. Clearly, Musgrove Park Hospital is rated inadequate. Yeovil District Hospital was rated inadequate, and the Bridgewater Hospital requires improvement. So my question, which has sort of been asked, but I will ask this, and that is, can Musgrove Park Hospital actually cope with an over 30% increase in activity in its maternity services? I recognise some people will go to Bath, as you said, and some people will go to Dorchester. But actually, the potential is that people won't do that and they might go to Musgrove Park. My next question relates to staffing. It's already been recognised, they are amazing. What I wanted to understand was how many staff exactly are employed at Yeovil and in which disciplines, and whether those people, I think I understand that none of those people are going to be out of jobs, what time they have to find alternative and what choices they have in finding alternative employment, or will they just be redeployed to Musgrove or to Bridgewater and indeed to Dorchester and possibly to Bath, what the arrangements are for covering the additional expenses while they do that. And, you know, I just had a quick check. I know there's a national shortage of midwives in the UK, and a search online reveals that the only vacancy is in Truro. I'm slightly surprised that we're not advertising at all for, maybe I've missed something, but I can't see anything except a vacancy in Truro for midwives. I wondered about the sharing of information. There is the ICB, and I know that Sally was online talking to staff at Yeovil yesterday, and she said she was completely in ignorance of what was happening. I assume since nobody knew anything until Monday at 4 o'clock, I think we were told in the presentation. I am slightly sceptical about that, and I have picked up a little bit of information. I wondered whether, in fact, conversations had taken place with Musgrove, Bath and Dorchester about what was going to happen at Yeovil in advance of Monday at 4 o'clock. I cannot believe that such a critical decision was made like that without any consultation with anybody else. And I also wanted to ask, please, you know, we're meant to be sharing info between the health service and the council and its services. I wondered whether, in fact, there'd been the use of any NDAs. I'm quite happy, so non-disclosure agreements. I'd like to know that, please. I'm quite happy to FOI that request in if that's the appropriate way to do it, and I'll wait for the answer after 20 days, whatever. The last observation I would make is I've spent quite a lot of time at work, sort of done 40 years worth of work over my lifetime, and quite a lot of that was related to personnel and to training. And to my knowledge, high sickness absence often is an indication of an acutely unhappy working environment. And I wondered what actions had been taken to assess and address sickness absence, and whether anybody would like to comment on the fact that there seems to be such a problem with sickness absence at Yeovil. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you. Before I go to Melanie, I'm just going to go to Mel Locke, who's going to talk about the council's information. Sorry.
So obviously we have been working together, and there was a meeting just yesterday, and I know there was a meeting the day before with our children's services, because one of the things that they've highlighted together, and this is about how do we work together in this space, is those children that are perhaps looked after children from us as a council or vulnerable from us as a council, how are we ensuring that we're getting the right information and the right support? And that is ongoing, that's all being identified, and that is all working together. None of this is ideal for anybody, but what we have to do is make sure we get the right outcomes for people. So what I would say is, as a system, whether that be our health visitors, whether that be our children's services, That is, they are in one place, and I know there's another meeting today to just keep that dialogue going. So no, there hasn't been any non-disclosure agreements in place here. We are openly discussing it as you would in any other environment where there were issues. So I would say we are working closely together to make sure that we get the right support for those vulnerable people.
Chair, if I may just, I was not suggesting there were any NDAs between the council and the health service. My question is directed at the health service. Thank you, Mel. I understand that. But my question is directed, and I'm perfectly happy to have that answer in writing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I don't quite understand in what context you're asking about non-disclosure agreements.
I wondered whether there were any non-disclosure agreements issued between the NHS and within the NHS and the various hospitals that have been mentioned. That is my question. If it's a nil, that's great. Thank you.
No, I'm not aware that there are. With the sickness, this is a specific area of sickness. We have our people plan. We're constantly looking at our sickness and our retention rates. And the sickness that I alluded to is specifically with the group of paediatricians. That's happened quite acutely. I think it would be fair to say that they aren't happy at the moment, because we are working with them, trying to encourage them to work in a different way. We're also looking at how we support them whilst we do that. You refer to the section 29A back in 2023 in the papers. So this is the verbal. This agenda item that we're talking about now is around the concerns around safety for the children and neonates, and is following the CQC inspection in January 25. The paper was, we were coming originally to talk about the improvements we've made following the CQC inspection 18 months ago to maternity and obstetrics, which sadly, and really sad, and kind of could see that this would happen, and which happened. We were going to talk about the improvements, which is going to be brought back to another meeting. As we talked about, we've been the decision to do the closure has really, the discussions have really only been going on for the last few weeks. And that, if you recall, I mentioned that we thought we were going to have to close immediately within a day or two, just before the May bank holiday, when we couldn't fill the rota. And we managed to patch together a rota at that point. The way these things work is that, of course, we have informal discussions with people at a very senior level, and we do try to plan and think and consider what we're doing slightly behind the scenes. And so we've been very openly talking to our ICB and to our NHS England colleagues and to our senior staff to get the best opinions and to try and plan as much as we can. But then there is no decisions made until you've actually gone through that proper process as well. So in the run up to the bank holiday, we had informal discussions with surrounding trusts to make sure that they could cope if this was the decision. And we had then had a formal meeting that the ICB chaired. We didn't need to take any action at that point, but we did signal that we were in quite a dire situation, and we might need to act in the coming weeks, which is then unfolded. I don't know whether anyone else wants to pick up, because there was quite a lot of points. So I don't know if there's any other specific ones that you want me to pick back up now.
Councillor Mudd, is there anything that are you happy with that reply? Is there anything you haven't had a reply to?
So is there a review in 3 months or 6 months?
So the formal review, we've been clear that we will review where we are in 6 months, that we expect that we are going to need to be closed for at least 6 months. We could talk about an initial period of 6 months. 6 months is a long time. I don't think anybody would be happy if they weren't hearing a progress report before 6 months. And so we haven't yet had our our meeting with NHS England. That is in an hour and a half. So, and I am sure that they will tell us when they want us to give a formal feedback to them. But we will be very much suggesting, because we're really trying to be very open and transparent about this, that there is a formal review of where we are in 3 months.
Okay, thank you. That would be kind if you can write to the chair once you've had your meeting at lunchtime. That would be very handy. My second question was, what is left in the 8% of the actions outstanding from the November and December 23 and the inspection reports? I'm very happy to have a written answer to that, because I asked what is the plan and what is the timescale. That's absolutely fine. Don't need that answered now, Chair.
I'm not going to talk about the next agenda item. We're going to defer that to the next meeting, because we've actually wanted to give this the credence that it deserves. So we're not going to talk about it for the next one, okay? But
so can I? Yeah, so can I just then clarify? I'm sure people will be able to listen back and pick up the questions that I asked, but I certainly asked about the risk assessment and Musgrove Park's ability to cope with an over 30% increase in activity, potentially. I want particularly to understand about the staff and how many of them there are in the different disciplines. Happy to have a written answer. I want to know whether they consider themselves to be out of jobs, whether they're going to continue working in Yeovil, all of them, whether they're going to be redeployed to Musgrove Park Hospital or to Bridgewater.
Councillor Munn, can we just let Dr. Bellamy answer some of those questions, please?
Yes, yes.
So none of this, we are doing all we can to retain and look after all of our staff. They will not be disadvantaged by this decision. They will be paid as they are normally paid, and we're working with them individually to work out what their appropriate arrangements are for them over the next 6 months. Some of those, their jobs will change very little. They will stay in Yeovil delivering antenatal care, community midwifery care. Others, we would like them to move across sites if that's appropriate for them, and we're working through with them individually. We've got an HR support there at the moment, so we're very much looking at their health and well-being as well as their working arrangements, and really working really carefully to support those. There was some other things. The very first thing you mentioned that you wanted to say, could you just repeat it again?
I think it was probably the 8% of actions that are outstanding, what the plan is to address those actions and what the timescale is to address those. I'm perfectly happy to have that in writing.
So we're going to address that when we come back next time.
Okay, so by which time I hope it'll be less than 8%, I guess.
I'm sure it will.
Yes, okay. That's fine. And then I asked about the risk assessment and the work that had been done to ensure that Musgrove can cope with an over 30% increase in activity. Should that happen? Because in the long run, it'll be for your customers, the patients, to decide where they go to have their baby, as opposed to.
Thank you.
So I think we've covered that once or twice. We are working with each of those women. We know that the number of women, this is 3 or 4 births a day. We are working with Bath, Dorchester and Musgrove. Each woman, depending on where she lives and her personal choice, will choose which of those units that she wants to go to. We are working, as James mentioned a few minutes ago, we have significantly increased our capacity at the Musgrove site in order to be able to increase the expectation of the increased number of women coming through our unit. And we're looking at our staffing to make sure that we've got the right staff to support those increasing number of women. The ICB are doing an equality impact assessment, working very closely with us, and we're working through that now as we speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very good questions. Thank you. I think that we've talked about this. We're going to ask. I apologise we're going to talk about the next part. We're not going to. We're going to defer that. I want to thank you very, very much today for coming today and actually answering and being really open and honest. And but as you can tell, this is a very passionate scrutiny group that cares about not only patients, but staff and about hospitals. and the impact on Musgrove and other hospitals is going to be immense, and we are very, very concerned about that. So we would like you to come back. I'd like to ask, can you come back? Is our next meeting is the 21st of October. Now that is only 3 months, but it would be in this important, or you could do the 9th of October, but oh, sorry, 21st of August, I beg your pardon. 21st of August, eyes are going. If you can do something about that, it'd be great. And the 9th of October. But I think for us, it would be really good if you could come back in August just to give us an update, give us some, so we can ask how things are going. We'd like to also know what the impacts are, what the impacts on other hospitals are, what the impacts on staff is, and what the impacts on patients. So we really want to know exactly what impact this has been for 3 months. I think that's really important. Would that be okay with yourself?
Absolutely. We're very happy to come back on the 21st of August.
Okay. And then what we'll do is the other item on the agenda we'll put in for the October meeting, if that's okay. All right. So I think we'll have it on 2 separate days again, so that it gives you the impact that you need, because we do want to hear the positives, of course we do. But I think at the moment we just need to focus on what is happening now. So is that okay?
Yes, thank you. Can I just ask one question?
Certainly.
Myself? I presume this is probably recorded because it's on Teams, is it?
Yes.
Are we able to have a copy of the recording?
It gets
It's published. Okay, thank you
gets
very much.
published.
Thank you.
But like I said, thank you very, very much today. We really appreciate your time. I know you were on the television yet last night and every time, so I know you've had a busy time.
See my hair.
I have closed it now, Councillor Bailey. I think we have talked about it enough now, but is it really pressing?
Well, it's just a very quick one, really. I just, in terms of confidence, could you share your action plan over the next 6 months with us?
Yeah.
The impact assessments, and then we can come back and relate to that when you talk to us in the future.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. We want everything when you come back. Everything. Okay. Every detail down to the fine art. We want to know what's going on. And I do want you to extend our best wishes to obviously your staff, hospital, and everyone else, because I think 6 months personally is too long. I think 6 months is too long. I think the impact on other hospitals is too much. I get it, but I do think we need to be striving for a quicker resolution to this. And that is what we want you to come back and tell us. So we're living in hopeful land here, okay? So, but thank you very, very much for today.
If it's okay,
Sorry.
can I just, I'm hearing a lot about the 6 months, and I just think it's important to understand from the insights of somebody who's pregnant right now, and I have been saying to people that we need to be realistic. Most people who are pregnant right now, they want to know what their choices are, they want to make plans. And if we talk about guarantees of the service being available in 6 months, that's going to make it really difficult for them to do that. And they may well be even more disappointed should that unrealistic timescale not happen. So it's about being open, transparent, and realistic rather than setting expectations that are going to fail. Thank you. Sorry to.
Well, I wish you all the best in your pregnancy, and I think the
I'm not pregnant at the moment.
oh, I beg your pardon. Misunderstood. I'm sorry. What I was going to say was, I think the problem we've had is it's been 6 months closure, or at least 6 months, or maybe there's different things have come out. There's not been a definitive answer. So that's why we keep referring to the 6 month. Councillor, you just wanted a quick one, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, sorry, I've forgotten your name.
It's Donna.
Donna, thank you. Can we hear more from your voice and when you come back, and the experiences that are happening now? Because as I mentioned, I know I'm back in my experience is back in history, but it still happened, and I just want to ensure that that doesn't happen for anyone else.
Yeah.
So we want to hear more from you. You represent service users, the women that are going to be impacted.
And I was on the agenda to attend today to talk about the improvements. I've been very much a part of that as well, and making sure that our engagement feeds into that. So yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
Yeah, I apologise that we've had to move that bit, but I think you can understand why. But it is important that, please come all back, and thank you, Sally, as well, for what you've done today, and Leanne and everyone, and because we do really appreciate it. But I'm going to now just suspend the meeting for 10 minutes so people to have a little bit of a break, and I'd like to say goodbye to you properly, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we're just about to start now the second part of the meeting. This is item 8. This is the Housing General Fund, and I'd invite Mel and Kirsty Larkins to present. Prior to that, I'm going to go to Councillor Sarah Wakefield, our portfolio holder, to just introduce this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm delighted to be bringing this to you this morning. I'm pleased that this committee is now going to be looking at housing as part of its remit, as it comes under my remit as well. There's been a complete restructure of the service. I think actually, the first thing I want to say is it doesn't include the council houses, the HRA. That is a separate section which is dealt with under communities at the moment. So it doesn't include that, but everything else to do with housing, homelessness, displaced persons, people we welcome into our community here, and sort of any sort of homelessness issues comes under it, together with quite an interesting thing, affordable housing, in that, if you didn't already know, we have somebody who, on a team actually, who go out and negotiate with the developers about what they're going to provide for us. It's a really important thing to do, because if you just leave them to themselves, two things will happen. First of all, they won't give us the sort of houses we need for our residents. Secondly, they'll get rid of all the affordable housing if they possibly can. We are working really hard, and we're working with our team to make sure that doesn't happen. And there will be more announcements coming out about that going forwards. But I would like to hand over to Kirsty. I don't even know what's standing at this point. She's got a short presentation just to introduce those of you who don't know to the housing service that we provide at this council.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I will try and keep it fairly brief in the hopes that members will have had opportunity to read through the slide deck before the meeting. So, as Sarah's mentioned, we've restructured the service recently as part of the council-wide restructure, and it's split into kind of two main areas. So the operational side of things, which is led by Louisa Hill and Sam Wendon Delira, and then we have the commissioning function. So the affordable housing comes under Joe Humble, and the kind of existing provision comes under Christian Trevelyan. And then we've got an interim service manager for our displaced people service, which is Eileen Souza. It's also worth noting that housing strategy, so those of you that are eagle-eyed may have noticed it's not on this structure, is part of a joint team with adults. We brought the two teams together there. So housing strategy, compliance, performance, and obviously adult social care strategy are all in one team now, headed up by Vicky Chipchase, which I think is a really good move for us. It provides a more robust team across both areas. So that's a really positive thing that's come out of housing moving into the adults directorate. As I said, I'm not going to read through all of the slides because hopefully you've had a chance to do that, but our housing options team consists of the equivalent of 25 full-time staff. We are in the process of recruiting some staff for that team, and I've supplied, and I know it's been circulated to committee members, the number of vacancies that we've got currently across the service. One of our big sort of positive areas is our Thrive 16+ service. So it's a service that we commissioned with children's social care, and it's around bed spaces and support for 16 to 25-year-olds. It's a relatively new contract, and is running really, really well. The sort of seamless service between the housing staff there and children's social care staff is really positive, so that clients don't feel like they're between services or not being picked up. It's a much more seamless service than we've previously had. And I'll talk a little bit more about rough sleeping and some of the challenges we've got later on in the slide deck. So as mentioned as part of the budget paper, temporary accommodation, it is a huge issue for us as a county and an area of large expenditure. We do struggle to find suitable temporary accommodation and suitable longer term accommodation. And again, I will talk in more detail later on. Part of our restructure was around a more focused approach about prevention of homelessness rather than kind of tackling it once it's happened. So we've got a new team of around 13 FTEs that are coming together and they will focus on that preventative work. So working much more upstream with anyone that we identify that may be homeless. We're also looking to work much more closely with other services, so with our adults and children's social care services, to share data to inform us of people, households that may become homeless before they even kind of register, so that we can get in much earlier and work with that family or that individual and hopefully prevent them becoming homeless, or at least delay them becoming homeless and having a planned move. And then we've got a fairly unique team of independent living officers. So they do home safety inspections, assessing hazards, but they also work with hoarders. So they take referrals from adult social care, from the fire brigade, from police, where they are concerned about people that may be hoarding in sort of unsafe conditions. They will work with them to help them to reduce clutter and make their homes safer. That is a slow process. It's not something that can be quickly gone into. So they work probably for a couple of years in some cases with those clients to help them reduce and have better living conditions. The Home Finder Somerset, hopefully you are all familiar with it, but it's the housing register. So to go on to the Home Finder Somerset register, you must have a local connection to Somerset. So we don't have it's not an open register where anyone can apply. There are some exceptions to that around people that may be fleeing domestic violence, or people that have been in the armed forces where they'll struggle to have a local connection to anywhere in the country. And those are national policies around that. But as I say, generally speaking, you would need to have a local connection to go onto the housing register. The numbers are growing. I don't think that will be a surprise to members. It's a snapshot in time, but when this was done, it was 12,752 people on the register across Somerset, which is a huge number. And you can see broken down by bed size as kind of fairly standard for the last probably 15, 20 years. Our highest demand is for those one-bedroom accommodation, and they are the accommodation we struggle most to have built by developers, by RRPs, due to the expense of building them and then the management issues that can sometimes be associated. So our affordable housing team are working with our registered partners around potential designs to start addressing that and produce something that's one bedroom but without those kind of additional communal areas, this sort of own front door, those types of things. Hopefully this graphic, it is quite shocking if you look how long it could take somebody to be housed, or if we were to house everybody on the register, but hopefully it's a really clear graphic. So if everything remains the same, 8 years to house everybody who's got a one-bedroom need, which is a really long time. So we really do struggle with that affordable, suitable housing in Somerset. 12 years to house everyone that's got a 4-bedroom need on the register. So as Councillor Wakefield's already mentioned, we have an affordable housing team. Their role, they work in partnership with our registered providers. They have a very proactive partnership there. They also work with private developers around negotiations for sites that are coming forward. They also work closely with Homes England around funding opportunities. They look at scheme viability. We know that's a huge issue across Somerset, where many developers come forward saying a scheme's not viable. They will liaise over what that looks like and trying to gain as much affordable housing as we can, because there is a desperate need. But they also work with developers around design innovation, so what adapted properties, sort of homes for life properties could look like, so that we are able to kind of keep people in their own home for longer where it's appropriate. So I've mentioned some of this. They'll look at 10 years, so social rent, affordable rent, shared ownership, first homes, discounted open market. There are many of them. And what I'd like, if the committee agreed, was to come back and actually spend more detail on each of these topic areas. We could spend 2 hours on each of these areas because there is a lot to unpick, but this is designed to be an overview for members today. They'll also look at the housing mix, how that fits into the local community. Does it complement the existing provision we've got there?
They're constantly using data. They work very closely with our planning policy colleagues. And I guess some of the things around the scheme design is that affordable housing should be integrated. You shouldn't be able, it shouldn't stand out in that scheme that, oh, that's the affordable housing unit. It has good space standards, good internal layout, designed so that it can be adapted for disabled users, making sure there's parking provision, and then also look at potential service charges and ongoing management and maintenance of those schemes once they become live. We've also, as I've mentioned, got a commissioning service, and I'm not going to spend a long time on these, but obviously they're working to make sure with the operational services that we are commissioning the right services at the right time for our service users. And we're really keen to start building in that lived experience into what those services are like, rather than we as professionals thinking we know those solutions and what's needed. That's kind of work in the pipeline. But also doing a lot around retrofit, so a lot across our own housing stock, which is amazing. So not only brings climate benefits, which I'm very passionate about, but also reduce costs for those tenants, which is fantastic. And we've also got our displaced people service. So it was originally set up in 2015. It's sat in public health, but as things have gone on and move forward, it's now sat within the housing service. So we've seen a number of schemes come forward. So originally it was in relation to what was happening in Syria and the refugees that we had coming from there. Then we've obviously had the Afghanistan programs, Ukraine programs, we have seen an increase in numbers of people seeking asylum in Somerset, but they are still quite low compared to the rest of the country. So some of our schemes are mandated now. So whereas when originally the team was set up, it was kind of with the councils and we all had our own individual policies about what we were going to do. Many of the schemes are mandated now, so we don't have an option. They are mandated by government, and we are given quotas around the numbers of bed spaces we need to provide. When those quotas are set up, they do take into account the numbers of rough sleepers, the resources, the housing market. So it does vary from county to county. There's also work there's also work ongoing exploring pilots. So at the moment, I'm no doubt we've seen in the news that a lot of accommodation, or all the accommodation for kind of these programs that the Home Office have taken on board, and there's a number of kind of private companies delivering that accommodation. So they're now looking at pilots to explore whether local authorities using money from central government can look to offer accommodation rather than through these big companies. So that's just starting now. It's probably also worth mentioning that whole of the displaced people service team is grant funded from government, so it's central money used to do it. It's not kind of local money that's used. So again, just some figures around what we've had coming into the county. I'm not going to spend hours because I say we could literally spend 2 or 3 hours discussing this and it's on its own. I think one of the things that we're very proud of in Somerset, though, is the strong partnership working that we've had in this area. So huge amount of work gone on with the voluntary community and faith sectors to provide wraparound support to try and make sure that those coming into our counties feel supported, that they're able to access advice, wellbeing support, they're able to access employment support, and kind of integrate into the community. As I've mentioned, we've got a number of challenges across housing. So over the last year, we've seen a 16% increase in homeless applications. So across the country, there has been an increase in homeless applications. We are peaking at that higher end, though, the average, I think the average is around 8%. So we are definitely kind of feeling it more here. We've seen a 40% increase in rough sleeping as well. We're working very closely with our MHCLG advisors to work on an action plan and with our wider partners. It's not something the council can resolve on its own. It does need that whole system approach. So we're working closely to address those and looking to bring those numbers down. And as I've mentioned, we've seen a 24% increase in the numbers in temporary accommodation. We are doing really positively on our families in accommodation, as mentioned in the finance report. We have brought the numbers of families in bed and breakfast accommodation right down and really reduced that, which is important. But now we also want to tackle the number of individuals that we've got in bed and breakfast accommodation for long periods of time. We are seeing more complex individuals, and again, this is a national issue, it's not a Somerset issue, requiring more intensive support and for much longer periods of time. And for some of those individuals, that may be for their lifetime as well. We have got a lack of affordable and suitable housing in Somerset. There's insufficient social housing coming forward to keep up the demand. As you all know, we've got a lack of private sector accommodation. Rents are extremely high and it's an extremely competitive market, coupled with our local housing allowance. Again, a national issue. Local housing allowance is not reflective of the rental costs. So it's a really difficult option for people, even where people are working, if they're on low incomes, trying to find something that's affordable in the private sector is extremely difficult. Got high house prices and relatively low wages as well. So all of that obviously creates a really challenging space. There are opportunities though, and there are positives going on. So we're working really closely with adults and public health around jointly commissioning services where there's overlap. I think that's really positive. Also, we've started to do some joint customer assessments across adults and housing, which has been really positive. And we've seen some good outcomes for those individuals. When people are approaching us, they don't know which services it is and always understand. So if we can do those jointly together, so people are having to tell their story only once rather than to multiple professionals, that's a real positive. Our next steps as a service is finalising the Homeless and Rough Sleeper Strategy Action Plan, and that's done with the Homeless Reduction Board, which is a partnership approach. We're completing our recruitment to vacancies. We're also aligning our processes across the county to ensure we're providing a consistent service. Also, a lot of work that we're doing around raising awareness of the lack of suitable accommodations and solutions to address the housing issue. And we're also looking at recommissioning services that are due to commence in April 2026. Thank you, and hopefully not too much time. Thanks, Chair.
Well, thank you, Kirsty. You've done extremely well. Thank you. I do have some questions, but I'm going to hang on a second while I get the members in. So it's Councillor. Oh, sorry, I couldn't quite see that. And Councillor Osborne and Trimnell and Bailey. Yeah, okay. So Councillor Hobbs first, please.
Thank you very much for a very good report. Could I just ask, without going into huge detail about the issues around Glastonbury, how the van dwellers are handled? Do they count as rough sleepers or not, and some of the very poor conditions those people live in? I know it's a bigger issue and it's probably a bigger piece of work about that, but could I just ask a question on that, please?
Yes, of course. So it is a bigger issue and something I'm very aware of. We're just in the process of putting together a working group. I know there's been a lot previously done by Mendip District Council, and I'm keen that we build on the good work that's happened. So some of them will be classed as rough sleepers depending on what conditions they're living in. So some people are really well equipped with heating and sort of comfortable living conditions, but we are also aware that some people are living in really poor conditions with no heating, no toilet facilities, all those other things that you would expect. So we're doing some work around that. We do have somebody within our housing team that works closely with the community, and we're just trying to build together kind of some actions, I say, build on the work that's already happened with Mendip, start moving that work forward and address some of those inequalities that we see there.
Thank you. Can we have Councillor Osborne, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations on securing the role of Service Director for Housing. I wish you all the best, and I'm really delighted that you're still with the authority. So good luck with this new role, Kirsty, and I'm really pleased to see that your talents have been retained. My question is on, have we got any information on the impact of air bed and breakfast on our housing stock? Because I know it was something we were going to look into in my old authority, was the increasing concern that we were losing housing that was in a rental and was now going into Airbnb because it was more profitable for the owners. What impact's that having on our housing supply?
We haven't got any data, but it is something that we do take under consideration. It is mentioned in our homeless and rough sleeper strategy. And I think now covering the whole of Somerset, I'm very aware that for some areas, for those that are kind of on the Exmoor and things, that is a big issue for us, where we're seeing stock go into that. So it's something we're working on, but we don't have figures. It's quite difficult to obtain the detailed figures, but something we are hoping to look at and how we combat that.
Okay. Thank you, Kirsty. I do have a second question, and I note we're now part of the refugee and asylum dispersal policy, and we've been set a target of, I think it's 878 bed spaces. What say did we have as an authority in setting that target, bearing in mind that when you look at that very graphic graph you put up and the time scale showing the scale and the challenge of meeting social housing needs, how are we going to sort of accommodate this one without potentially impacting on the private rental market and seeing an ever increasing number of people coming to us again because they're in effect being displaced by a provider that is in effect government funded? Do we have any say on this at all?
So there is a formula used by central government that was put in place across the country to work out the numbers. They're around, they look at rough sleeping, the private sector market, demand for housing and all of those. So that's what, so we don't have a say in the number, they give us the number and we have to work to that. So it's 826 bed spaces. We do find that many of our people that are placed here do end up moving out of county because they choose to join family elsewhere. So many do move out of county. We have had money in from central government around local housing authority funding. So we've managed to bring in and purchase some additional properties that initially are used for our refugees coming into the county. But once they're no longer needed, they will come back into our general needs housing stock. So there is a longer term gain there, which is really positive, I think, for us as a county. At the moment, all the accommodation is purchased by private companies. Clear Springs operate in our area, and they do tend to bring on property that we wouldn't be looking at from a social housing perspective. So they're bringing property back into use that we wouldn't normally look at from our perspective, and they have obviously the income, the funds to be able to do that. I hope that's helped answer it. I can give you more detail, but probably easier to do it in a written response rather than kind of verbally, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. And who's going to be monitoring Clear Springs? Because there was a piece in the Times this weekend and it did draw attention that some of the accommodation they were using, I think there was a Welsh site quoted, was below standard. So who is going to be monitoring to see that the quality of accommodation is adequate and that then doesn't bounce on to ours having to sort of cover up it or having to cover for that, if that's the case, that we then have to house people because the accommodation supplied is not up to scratch.
So they're home office contracts, so overall they have the responsibility, but we do have workers going into the accommodation to provide support. So if there are any concerns, we would raise that, and ultimately we do have a responsibility under sort of housing standards and our environmental health team that if we needed to take appropriate action, we could. I'm pleased to say we've not needed to do that, and the accommodation has been of a decent standard, but obviously those options are there if needed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And perhaps if there is an update, Kirsty, anything that you can give the committee in between times, we'd really appreciate it. That's okay.
Yeah, very happy to do that.
Lovely. Thank you. Councillor Trimble.
Thank you. So mine's a quick question. So most of us will have dealt with somebody who has been, told that they have to leave their accommodation for whatever reason. I've had cases where people have been evicted by a local business that had gone under. And so many people think that they are, I think that the phrase was owed an accommodation duty. And I wondered if you could expand on how we assess or help people to establish whether those are owed an accommodation duty or whether they are expected to find their own through the private rental market. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, I could talk a lot of detail here, but I won't. So anyone can apply to us and say, I think I'm threatened with homelessness. There is legislation then set out and a homeless code of guidance. So for somebody that's kind of fit and healthy, a single person with no dependents, we would give them advice and maybe assistance if that was needed. So that could be in the form of a deposit bond guarantee or rent in advance, or advising them to apply for a discretionary housing benefit payment depending on their situation. But it would be quite limited as to what we would do. We don't have a duty to provide temporary accommodation to those people. If we've got families that've got dependents, or it's an individual with health problems that impact their sort of day-to-day lives, that could be physical or mental health conditions, then we have more of a duty. But we would always try to work with that household to prevent their homeless situation, to look for private sector accommodation, and if necessary, place into temporary accommodation. And then obviously, again, if necessary, if we haven't been able to find other solutions, then they will be part of the Home Finder Register and they can bid on properties as they become available. Probably just worth saying that the way in which properties are allocated, it's normally allocated to the person in the highest band, the highest housing need that's been waiting the longest period of time. Although sometimes there may be local connection criteria on a property, which means that if the top person hasn't got that local connection, they might go to the next person on the list. But generally speaking, that's the kind of the criteria that's used to allocate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Councillor Bailey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report, Kirsty, and welcome back aboard. I've got three areas I want to focus on, really. The first one is probably the idiot's question, and I was thinking about it particularly when I reflected on the fact that the minister nationally who built the most houses since the Second World War was Harold Macmillan. And so that my question is, why don't we build more? And I'm asking that because I know there'd be probably a slick answer or sort of a slick answer, but we've funded buildings in the past. And I asked that question. That's the first one. Second one is on section 106, is how at a local level we can influence that. And I know that's more complicated and covers lots of other provision of schools, etc. And make sure it actually happens and the developer don't jib out at the last minute because they suddenly found a short cash. And we've got quite a lot of expensive barristers to support them. And the third one is a specific one, really, which is I'm aware that in Martock that there are a number of single bedroom properties which are becoming available, and they've been refurbished by Avery and they're on the market. So they're moving off the market, off that we're looking at. And it seems to be ridiculous that that is happening, because that's just draining. There's a hole in the bottom of the bucket we're trying to fill up, basically. They've been nicely done up, but they were up for rent beforehand. So that's the third question. Thank you.
I think I'm going to take the first question and I'm going to hand over to Sarah for the second. So I'll do the first and the third, if that's okay. First of all. So why don't we build more? Money is a big part of that. So
there hasn't been enough funding coming forward. The HRA kind of side of things, you'll see that the 30-year business plan, and again, this is not common to Somerset. It is quite challenging on the development front, is what I would say. We've not had that funding come through. I thought I was going to escape mentioning planning and phosphates today, but that's obviously been another issue. That has been another issue across the county about being able to bring not just social housing, but housing forward generally. We have struggled as a county. I know things are moving in the right direction now, which is very positive. But yeah, money is a huge kind of block there. We'll be interested to see what Homes England announce as part of the sort of next spending review. We're hoping there'll be some positive announcements that will enable us to kind of unlock development and work more closely with our partners. Marta, I need to come back to you on that. I will speak to colleagues at Avery for a response on that, so that I could make a guess, but I won't. I think that would be unfair to them, but I will come back and again provide a written response for the committee, so you've got that.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, shall I answer the other question?
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I'm quite interested in your first question about why don't we build more houses. As you probably know, after the war, when a lot of damage had to be done, there was a lot of house building gone on, and a lot of it were flats. My father was borough architect in Kingston upon Thames. He built loads of houses, quite a lot of which have subsequently been taken down because they used a system build that hasn't always lasted. Not all the time they didn't, but big estates they built, big council estates. But obviously with some of those, there was a huge emphasis on building houses and people coming back from the war. So we had some people who were unemployed, people who wanted to do that kind of work, people who got into it. I think we're in a completely different situation. And I would just remind you that when council houses were allowed to be sold in the 1980s, they wouldn't allow you to use the money to build more houses. And that's another problem. We're reaping not the benefits of, the disadvantages. So I just remind you about that. When it comes to section 106, it is a problem, you're right to point it out, that developers are asked to do a huge number of biodiversity net gain, they're asked to put active travel, schools monies for other things, roads, road alterations that are needed. And so that's a big negotiation that goes on. And we've got two problems with that, really. One is that the negotiation often happens a long time before the houses are actually built. And that means that sometimes the section 106 is actually out of date almost immediately after it's been signed. So that's an issue we are aware of. And the second thing is that because of the viability claims, which obviously you understand, the developers are getting a lot of advice, and you mentioned this, from barristers and other people on how to get out of doing affordable houses. They don't bring them any money. The trouble is affordable houses are a bit of a disadvantage. Back in the recession, when I was still doing development agreements for registered providers, we were getting to the point where they wanted to do the affordable houses and they wanted to do them first because they were going to get paid for them because the provider would buy them. That's not happening so much at the moment, although there is a bit of a slowdown in building generally, lack of equipment, lack of trained builders and so forth. So that's all conspiring against us getting what we want. But what we're trying to do within the council is have another look at these demands that we make under section 106 and see if we can just regrade it slightly so that affordable housing comes slightly higher up the list. It isn't always the thing, oh, we better get rid of the affordable houses then. We are very aware of the numbers that we are losing on sites across the county, and we have agreed with our team to address it. So all I can say is we're looking at that, how to address it. We will have to draw in colleagues from education and highways and all the rest of it to make that. But if it's an argument between all those, we don't want affordable houses to be the first thing they do. We want it to be nearer the last thing they go. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, sir. Can I just come back quickly, because I think the point you make is very valid, obviously. But I think that if we look at the effects on growth, just by opening and a very quick growth compared to Hinkley Point, for example, opening the ability to build lots more houses and train people, you can turn the tap on almost overnight. So it has so many effects in the market, and developers borrow the money. Why can't we? And I know I'm asking a question that you ask all the time. And
would you lend a bankrupt money?
Pardon?
Would you lend a bankrupt money? I mean, we haven't got money on the council at the moment to make that kind of investment. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do it. and you say, yes, you'll get the money back, but you've got to have that seed fund money to start with. And we, at the moment, until the government, actually what they could really do, what we could really do with is unlocking the land banks that developers have got. They've got properties auctioned out all over the place. They've either bought them or they've agreed to buy them for too much money and they can't be brought forward. And that needs unlocking. There's lots of things that can happen, but I'm afraid this council putting its own money towards them at the moment isn't going to happen. We're doing it through the HRA. We're not going to be able to build our own at the moment. Working with our RPs who are keen to build, and actually we've got some very good ones and good relationships with them actually, and a variety of them. We're not just one or two in our county. We've got quite a few, which is a real advantage. So yeah, we're working with them, but we can't actually build more of our own at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, it's funny that the right to buy is given people ownership and it's done a lot of good, but it also had its drawbacks. So we know there's two ways of looking at it. So Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, it was partly for John's information because once upon a time, housing associations did have to consult the local authority if they wanted to dispose of property. And you will probably remember, Kirsty, I actually called one in. And it was the first call-in that had been done at South Somerset for ages and ages. What we subsequently learned at that was I think our own existing policy wasn't worth the paper it was written on because it had no teeth at all. And also that government of the day was about to change it. So the housing associations, registered providers, do not need to inform us as an authority of when they are going to dispose of properties on the private market, which is why we are where we are. The interesting bit is when it comes to Homes England subsidy, we've always asked, certainly we did in Area South and probably nationally, is that the bulk of the property is the social rent, and that means it is far more expensive for a developer because they've got to sell it at something like half price. If it is affordable rent, which is the 20%, that is much more palatable in some ways for a developer, but also it seems to unlock Homes England funding, which isn't unlocked by social housing because Homes England don't want to put money into that, but they will put it into other products such as shared ownership and other things. So the challenge for us, I guess, is to how do we try and work with Homes England or maybe even engineer a changing policy so we can actually attract Homes England funding in, because we had a case at the planning committee where if we went for, it was a viability one, again, if we went for affordable housing, we would get something like 15%. If we went for social, it would drop down to 10.
Do you mind, do I come in, Chair, just to respond? Certainly, I'd be very happy for you. Thank you, Chair.
So the disposals was an interesting one, and yes, so I do remember the call in, and yeah, it has changed that we no longer need to be notified. Having said that, our affordable housing team does have a really good working relationship with our registered partners, and we are just doing a piece of work around them advising of any properties they are looking to dispose of, because sometimes it's they no longer operate in an area or they have very few properties in an area. So we want to try and see if we can then negotiate, or actually we know another RP is operating in that area, rather than disposing on the open market, would you consider obviously exchanging ownership into another provider? Or sometimes we may be able to access funding, particularly keen if it's rural properties, to keep them as affordable or social housing. We know we really struggle to replace those units, so particularly passionate about that. So we are doing a piece of work. No, they don't have to notify us, but I think we have got very good working relationships with quite a lot of our providers, and Jo and her team are good at kind of doing that negotiation and trying to bring the best from what could be a sort of bad situation, as in properties going onto the open market. And they also do work very closely with Homes England, so there is a lot of work that they're doing around bringing more funding into Somerset and highlighting the need that we've got in Somerset as well.
Well, that's good to know, isn't it? Because I think when we were in the old life, we all as districts had good relationships with all the providers and we worked really close together. And it's probably, you need to tell us that, because I think it's just, we need that confidence to know that's still happening. So thank you for that. Councillor Prostone.
Thank you very much. The first thing I want to mention is that, yes, John mentioned flats, but I also know that in Martock area and Ash, bungalows are another one of concern, and I know that they are prime properties. And when it looks to keeping people in their homes or moving them to more appropriate homes, those are vital to retain within the stock. I would like to ask two things. The first one is on homes themselves. So obviously in the South Somerset, old South Somerset district, we went from, you know, housing stock to South Somerset Homes, Yarlington, Avery. And Avery predominantly still maintain that housing stock. Is it possible for us as a committee to request either Avery to come to us or to tell us how many homes they have released and sold that entered into the original agreement, and how many they have replaced from the original agreement? That would be really good to know, to see if there is a growing concerning discrepancy in the provision available to people in the whole of the South area. I know there are other pockets of housing associations within South Somerset, but predominantly those small ones are growing rather than, but obviously Avery is very significant in this area. That's it, the main thing. And my question also is that, thank you very much for sending us the vacancies within the department list. I don't want to go into it too much, but how much stress, strain is there on the current staff? How quickly are you moving towards implementing new staff? And one of the notes that stuck out quite a lot is the pay discrepancy. How is that being addressed? Thank you.
I'm not sure if all of that is appropriate for yourself, but if you can answer as much as possible, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I'll, outside of this, get some details about the bungalows, just some addresses would be helpful, so I can pick that up for you and provide a response. Yeah, we can certainly ask Avery, and I would suggest we ask other providers. In fact, we are doing a piece of work around that now, so that we have got the numbers across the county, so we can keep an eye on it. That's something that Joe Humble's team are doing. We're just recruiting a data officer, which will hopefully help with some of that information. So once we have it, very happy to share with the committee across all of our partners. Avery are very keen to develop. They've got some sites they're hoping to bring forward in the south area, so that's really positive. And we have other partners as well that are very keen to be bringing forward sites. That's really good. Vacancies within the department and stress and strain on staff. I would say staff are feeling pressured. I would be lying if I said they weren't. It is a pressured job anyway. It is a tough job, and you've got to be pretty resilient to keep doing it. We have got agency staff support where we can, where we've got the money to fund those. So whilst there are vacancies, they are filled with agency staff to support us. And we have been lucky that we've attracted some really good quality agency staff that are doing a great job, and we're very grateful. As we recruit into the service, obviously those agency staff will leave us to kind of keep those costs down. The pay differential we are addressing, so I am in discussions with our HR business partner about how we do that. We are looking to apply some market supplements to attract the right candidates into those roles. It is we do face challenges within the housing option service, similar, not as large scale, but similar to planning and ecology in those other areas. We do struggle to attract recruitment in that are of the quality that we would want. One of the options we will look at longer term is that kind of growing our own, so bringing people in at a lower level, but providing those training opportunities, so we kind of develop them in-house, which I'm really passionate about us doing across the service. It's really important to bring the new people into the service, so we're trying to address the vacancies as quickly as possible. It's kind of their top priority as a management team to get them filled as fast as possible.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all the staff that are actually working really hard on this.
I do agree with you about bungalows very much. I think if we could get providers to build these bungalows, we're all living longer. Average age now is 98. So So I mean, we'll all need bungalows. So, yeah. Okay, this is Councillor Power, please.
Thank you, Jill. It's just about with the affordable housing, obviously, because I now sit on the Planning South Committee. I just want to know, in the long-term effect, will it affect the 5-year land supply at all? Thank you.
I need to check with our planning colleagues. I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, but that's fine. Happy to take it forward and provide an answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanton?
I know I've said this before, Madam Chairman, but bungalows, we need to be very careful. If you want to keep old people fit, you need them in houses with stairs.
No.
Bungalows should be, I'm sorry, Chair, but this is a fact from experts in geriatric fitness. We need to dissuade people from going into bungalows until they really need to.
Can I just say there was obviously a difference of opinion. As somebody that's nursing a broken femur, the only way I got out of hospital was actually telling them I had a bungalow. So, and they said to me, thank goodness, they wish, and the hospital actually said to me, they wish there were more bungalows around. So I guess they do say to you to exercise on stairs, but they actually said with what's happened to me, stairs were not a good idea. But I do respect there is a difference of opinion, and I think, but I don't think developers will ever build bungalows because it costs too much money, too much land. So there we are.
We do have some coming forward, so yeah, they do happen. They are more expensive because by the very nature of their footprint, but we do have them coming forward, and we've got some new ones that have been built recently.
Oh, that's it. See, Mike, you and I can be happy together. That'd be wonderful.
Can I just add, there's also single level accommodation where you can have maisonettes, you can have blocks of flats.
There is
Hopefully with
alternatives.
some provisions
Yeah.
of lifts,
Okay.
which will
Okay, I wanted to just ask a very quick question, as I haven't been able to. I wanted to ask a deep dive really into this, and forgive me if this is not right, but a lot of us are being told, a lot of us are being said that there's no housing available, there's nothing because we've got unfortunately displaced people, we've got people from Ukraine, Afghanistan and everything else taking housing, but we haven't actually got any figures here. Now, that's one of the questions I'd like to ask. And the other question is, I'm really glad to hear that national space standards is really prominent. I think that's absolutely essential. So I'm very, very pleased about that. But the housing assessments, could we have a breakdown of where the most housing assessments are needed? What areas are worse than others? So we've got some idea for ourselves. Displaced people, I'd like some figures on that, please, as well, because I think that would just give us an idea, because you get so many people out there speculating on how many are here, how many are taking housing, and I think it would just be really good for us to know the detail, if that was possible.
I'm happy to share some figures, and I'll put this in writing to you, but just to say, so how many refugees were living in Somerset? As of December 2024, there were 1,921 individuals who arrived via the Homes for Ukraine and the Afghan Resettlement Programme. That as a total for the population is 0.33% of the population. So we're talking very small numbers. They do not get preferential treatment. I know there's a huge amount of rumours go around. I was at the hairdressers being told, well, the thing is, Kirsty, you're housing all those people that are coming from other countries. That is not the case. I want to be very clear on that. Yes, once they've been given settled status, they can apply to go on the housing register. They are then banded and given a date, the same as anybody else on the registers. They don't jump queues, they don't get preferential speedy treatment. There is not enough housing, full stop, for the need that we've got. Even if we didn't have anybody from the Displaced People Service, we would still be really struggling to house people. That's the reality. There isn't enough of it. But I'm sure Councillor Wakefield would like to come in.
I just want to add, if I may, Chair, that if the government would allow people to work, then they could afford to pay some rent, but they won't let them work while they keep them banged up in a hotel somewhere. That is not working for us as a country. When they come out, when they have got the ability to go and get a job, they go and get a job, and then they don't need us to provide housing because they can pay their own rent. So I don't think there's any question that what we're doing for these vulnerable people who've come across the world and have been let into the country and granted settled status so they can stay. All we're doing is doing the same as we did for anybody else, but they don't jump up the register. They don't take our houses off us. They, as Kirsty has already said, a lot of them move out of the county because because it's not where they want to be. So it's not a big problem in Somerset. It really isn't. We do our best to look after them when they're here. The government send them down. They give us the money to look after them. They source the accommodation for them. We are not doing it ourselves through this council. We're doing it through a service provided by the government, which is paid for by the government.
And this is what I'm saying. I think it's a misconception. I think people are getting the wrong. Maybe we need to send a recommendation, really. Maybe we need the very thing that you said, Sarah. Maybe we need to put a recommendation forward from this, and I'll leave that to members to have a little think. But I think there's sometimes there's misinformation, and people are saying, oh, well, there's not going to be any housing in Somerset, there's not going to be anything left, whatever, and it's just the wrong information. So what I'm saying is, if we could have some, Kirsty, if we can have some facts and figures, even deeper dive, and I appreciate that's a lot to ask, but I think it gives reality to this. It puts us in a clear mind, if I may.
Can I do?
Yeah, Councillor Sally.
Sorry, so very happy to do that. In fact, we're just developing some sort of frequently asked questions so that we can give people the factual information. I think that's really, really important, especially for you as members to have that information. So I'm hoping we'll have something out to you early next week on that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Councillor Sally.
I just want to fully endorse, Chair, your idea there. I do think we need to get the facts out there, and I think that anybody at the council should be very mindful of how this incites divisions, and those divisions can get quite nasty. I think it's a myth that that homes have been taken away from people in Somerset. Data, policy by those who are involved in it can be provided. So I think this scrutiny committee should be sharing that to all members of the council, and that all members of the council should be careful in the way they speak about this subject because of the difficulties and incitement, divisions, hate we all see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Trimnell.
Just a very quick one. So I had a briefing a couple of weeks ago about this, and I said exactly the same. I asked whether we could have a members briefing so that members were aware, so that members are able to handle the complaints, questioning, accusations, hatred, all of those things, so that we know what is happening in our areas or in Somerset as a whole, and are able to field those, because they will not be going to Kirsty or anyone from that team. They're going to be coming to councillors. So we need to know that. So I have already requested that that was put in place. So thank you.
Can we do that through the executive? Sarah, could that be a recommendation to the executive that we actually formally say that we want more information?
We've already agreed to do it, actually. We've already agreed.
Yeah, we have agreed. Yeah, okay, that's thank you so much, because I think that will help us all, definitely help us all. We have been asking for a long time, but now that Kirsty's with us, everything's going to be good. I can tell. That's really good.
No pressure.
Yeah, and Kirsty, I would like. I'm sure the committee would like you to come back, if I may, in the next meeting. Perhaps you could, even if it takes a while, and I do appreciate you just can't, get this information. But if you can come back to the next meeting, that'd be really helpful for us, I think.
I think we're really, really keen to do that. So some of this information we do have, and I'm happy to share before that next meeting, but we would like to come and do a sort of deeper dive into each of these topic areas with the committee. I think that's really important that we do that, and we have that relationship with the scrutiny committee. So keen to be back and bring some of the team with me as well.
Well, what we'll do is we'll put the maternity that we've asked them to come back, and we'll put yourselves, because I think housing is one of the most important things in our council. Absolutely. So I think we all agree that that's what we'd like. What we don't want to do is we're going to have a deep dive with the maternity, but we also want with you. So perhaps just the two things on the agenda for next time, so we get the equal information that we need. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah, as well. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 8. I do apologise to members. This has all taken a long time, this meeting today, but I think you'll all agree it's been a very important meeting. And I'd like to thank our guests coming in today to talk about suicide prevention strategy. So I'm now going to hand over to Amy Hardwick and Patsy Temple to present, please.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies, we've come here today as part of the Suicide Prevention Partnership. So I have online had a number of colleagues from the ITB and SFT, and we have in the room Andy from mine, so I will get to introduce themselves and share my item, the presentation. I just wanted to make apologies for Neil from SFP, who had to leave due to the delay that's coming on. I'm afraid he's had to go on to another meeting.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
So I just wanted to check that we're all happy to continue with this now. I know it's at the end of quite a long meeting and quite an emotive topic. I just wanted to check that people are happy for this to go.
Yeah, we are.
now.
We are really very happy to hear from you. Honestly, I apologise how long this has taken.
Understandable. So I don't know. So we've come today. My name is Pat Temple. I'm a consultant in public health. I work with the public health team at Somerset Council, and I hold a portfolio around the public mental health alongside children and young people and sexual health. I have next to me my colleague, and I'll get to introduce herself.
Amy Hardwick, Health Improvement Manager in the public health team.
Andy Pritchard, Chief Operating Officer for Mind and Somerset, part of the Open Mental Health Alliance and on the suicide prevention help.
And online, I think, Will, you've managed to put your camera on at one point.
I'm here. I'm William Barnwell. I'm the Associate Director for Mental Health, Autism and Learning Disabilities at Somerset ICB.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Amy, who's going to go through a couple of the slides today, and then we'll be doing a bit of a double act between us, and then there's space for any questions at the end from ourselves or any of the members from other organisations that are online.
We've just got a bit of an IT issue at the moment.
Yeah.
Just bear with us.
You've got a bit of frozen.
Yeah.
It's probably tired, isn't it? It's probably what's
You know, fine. Margarita.
Just maybe while you're waiting, I have got some literature on your table.
Yes, thank you
You've
very
got
much.
Timeline, you've got the crisis safe space, and I have got some more particularly interesting things like the suicide bereavement support service and the training offer that's provided.
Have you
through
got more
council.
leaflets on the bereavement now? Have you got
Yeah,
them?
they're here.
Yeah, are you able, would you mind just to,
Yeah.
because I think anything you've got, I think we, it's very good, very well valued. I'm so sorry, I'm, right, so we're up and running, but if you don't mind, just letting us have those, that'd be very, very, very kind.
I've got more in my bag if anybody's.
Lovely, thank you very much, thank you. Okay, right, over to you, Amy.
Thanks again. Okay. So just a bit of a run through of the process that we've been through. So we started drafting the strategy in January last year. It took a while to develop because we were working in a partnership, so there was a lot of collaboration with the partners to develop that draft strategy. And then I think the last time we came to Scrutiny was whilst I think we were out to public consultation with that draft strategy at that time. We had a really good response to that. I think we had almost 100 people respond, which was amazing, and really helpful feedback. And then we spent time redrafting the document and made it a lot longer, including a lot more kind of context and really trying to tell the story a lot more about where we are and where we want to get to, and what's kind of happening at the minute. I think recognizing that it is a public facing document and it should be a public facing document, and therefore it needed much more kind of information in it, basically. And then again, took a bit of time to agree a new governance process for us in the Suicide Prevention Partnership, which perhaps he'll go through in a bit more detail later. So we then published the strategy in February this year.
Excuse me, do we have a copy at all, or is it online? There's no link. I noticed that. I think it's just been really good if we
had the link in the presentation, isn't there?
I didn't see a link. Sorry.
On the next slide presentation, there's a link at the bottom that will take you through to it online, but we can circulate it.
Yes, if you could, would you do? Yes, please. I didn't think that was a link. Working together to prevent. Is that a link? Is that the link on the bottom there?
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's separated. It's separated. Okay, so yeah, like I said, the consultation, we have really good feedback, and we've made the document a lot longer, laying out the context and and like I say, telling the story a lot more, including information we know about the research that's been done nationally on known risk factors for suicide. We also included some case studies as well to really kind of tell the story and bring it to life of things that are happening. So services we've got in Somerset and the really good work that is already going on. And we also added more information linking to evidence and best practice as well. And also, once we have the governance agreed, we've included information about evaluation and monitoring going forward. So I did kind of outline this last time, but our strategy is based on the National Suicide Prevention Strategy, which was published in 2023. So we've used the 8 priority areas for action as a framework for developing our strategy. So each of those 8 priority areas for action sit underneath each of the overarching aims that we've got on the right-hand side of these slides. So the first one is around using evidence, using an evidence-informed approach to all of our suicide prevention activities, using data and the voice of lived experience with everything that we do. Engaging with people of all ages in Somerset, working with businesses, education providers, media outlets, to make sure that we're spreading that message that together we can make a difference, and suicide prevention really is everybody's business. And then finally, looking at whether our services like crisis services and our bereavement services are meeting the needs of our population. So looking to develop a really robust evaluation system to assess whether they are meeting the needs of our population and how impactful and sustainable they are.
Thank you, Amy. I have put the correct link in the chat of this meeting for the suicide prevention slide now.
I'm so sorry. It didn't look like a link to me. Normally, it has I didn't really realise that was it.
I think in the coming across, it got space in it, so it wasn't even working.
Okay,
So,
but that
technical error, but it's right one should be in the chat now.
Jamie will make sure that we've got it as well. So thank you.
Now, too quickly here. So, wanted to just give you a bit of background. Once we've finalised the strategy through that consultation process, we then went through a process of trying to get some better ownership of the suicide prevention strategy from the whole of the Somerset system. So that's across the health and the integrated care system. And we have managed to work with the system mortality group to own the structure of the strategy and to support the governance and the assurance and oversight of that strategy and action plan. The idea is that this will report into that group regularly, and eventually that will be through what we have set up as a preventable death subgroup. So this is looking, which I will go on to describe in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides' time, which is really looking at the learning that we can gather from a range of deaths that are avoidable and that are what we've called as really, sorry, I've lost my word, death to despair, for want of a better word. But what we have suggested is that we have the strategy and we have the existing SUPA, which remains as a discussion group and for a wider forum of this work. So with a really big membership, some really enthusiastic people in that. But out of that, we have some task and finish groups that take forward these 3 work streams that we've talked about around evaluation, around engagement, and around data intelligence piece. And that each of those, this is evolving currently, as I'm sure you'll be aware of the restructure of some of those NHSA organisations, and we're looking at how we can best service this as we go through. Looking at that, we want system partners and organisations who may be best placed across the system to support and to take that work forward and help develop those action plans in collaboration. So we're looking to try and bring on board leadership from other parts of the system, such as the DCFSE, FFT, the ICB, as well as public health, who have traditionally been supporting this work and taking this forward. We've looked at restructuring, so the SUPA that was the kind of primary vehicle for moving this work forward, we're now suggesting that becomes 3 times a year, so meeting it 3 times a year and have a much more of a focus on particular topics and have the much more discussion focus, and then we can bring out of that some recommendations to take through those 3 groups going forward. The work streams will be able to set up their own frequency, their own terms of reference, but they will plan and report on their progress to the system mortality group and service and talk through the premature mortality group. There are some, this is obviously a 5-year strategy, so this is about moving things forward in a staged approach and working with the system that's able to do that.
So, as we said, we're still kind of pulling together those work streams, but there is a lot of really good work already happening underneath each of those kind of programs of work. So, we've got a data sharing agreement, which I think is in its final kind of stages now of being agreed, which is a huge step forward to try and help us to build a much better picture from the information that we have, because at the moment we get real-time surveillance information through from the police, and that's very limited, but there's lots of other services that might have been in touch with somebody in the lead up to their death. So this information sharing agreement will help us to kind of build a better picture of somebody's journey leading up to their death, and hopefully identify some learning from that to take forward. Like Patsy said, we're also in the process of developing the premature mortality subgroup, which sits underneath the system mortality group. And again, that's all about learning from deaths by suicide, domestic abuse, homelessness deaths, all kind of under that deaths of despair, horrible terminology umbrella. But there will often be lots of shared learning that we can take from those deaths. So it's hopefully going to be a really helpful process. And then within the engagement section, we haven't started doing it yet, but the plan is to develop a suicide prevention pledge so that individuals and businesses can sign a pledge, and it incorporates the training that we have available for people to do in Somerset and the Orange Button Community Suicide Awareness Scheme that's going on in Somerset. We've got over 1,300 people now that are part of that Orange Button scheme. So hopefully it'll be a vehicle to try and broaden that and reach wider into communities than it is currently. We're also working with Samaritans at the moment on developing a response to the challenges we've got around social media posts linked to road closures that are happening quite frequently. It's really, really challenging. We've got a whole kind of guidelines that Samaritans have already published around working with media outlets, but it's a much more emerging issue with social media. It's much harder to control. And so hopefully they're going to be doing some research into what can be done to try and support us to control that. Because I know some of the comments can be really quite harmful that we get on there, and it's really difficult to then engage with the moderators of those groups to close those comments down. But it is something that is on our radar and we are working on. We're also working with regional highways teams, so they've got a focus on suicide prevention at the minute. We had a first meeting a couple of weeks ago, and again, that's really, really good to see other kind of sectors that are getting involved in suicide prevention and thinking about what they can do to support suicide prevention efforts. And then we've also got the programme of work with the network of support benches. So these are benches that have got a QR code on them that links to lots of different types of mental health support. It's a really great project that we've worked on with experts by experience from Open Mental Health, and has been developed, in line with their advice. And a really kind of good option because it provides different options for people. When someone's in crisis, they might not always want to call Samaritans or telephone someone. So we've got options on there for people to just listen to things like the letter of hope that's been recorded again by people with lived experience of suicide, and options to text people, or options for people to click on if they're just worried about someone and they want some advice on what to do. So that's a really great project. And I think we've got benches installed in Taunton, Bridgewater, Glastonbury. I'm hoping kind of Shepton Mallet way. We've got some installed now. And yeah, it's actually a project that's kind of expanding across the whole of the Southwest as well, which is amazing. And then finally, the evaluation one. So we want to try and establish a process to make sure that the evaluation information that's already collected by all of the crisis services and the bereavement service can actually be shared with the Suicide Prevention Partnership, because at the moment that's not something that's happening. And again, that's really important for those kind of priority areas of action around providing effective care. The only way you know you're providing effective care is to make sure you're evaluating the services. So that's a really important step for that one.
Thank you, Amy. So I just wanted to give you a bit of background or context around the premature mortality group that has been set up under the governance system of the Somerset System Mortality Group. Been set up by Public Health, but it's also got members of the Adult Safeguarding Board leading it. And it's been brought together to look at a multi-agency approach to looking at some of the common themes that are coming out from some of the statutory review processes that are happening. So we have learning from death, we have reports, we have basic homicide reviews, we have a homelessness review process, death review process now in Somerset. And what we wanted to do is to provide the ability in Somerset to bring the learning of that together and to start to look at it and see where we've got some commonalities and other bits of work that we could do that would start to help to address some of that, and how we could link a joint agency review around that and just to explore that. So that's in process of being set up and links through very much with the work that we're doing on suicide prevention. I know before there's been a request through the domestic homicide review process, which is a statutory process, that we look at those cases that come through that process, which are suicide cases, be they from perpetrators or victims. And we are looking at how we incorporate that into that premature mortality review group and that process there. The other step we've made is to put some suicide prevention expertise into those domestic homicide reviews if they're happening, those cases which are around suicides or an open verdict from the coroner, and working with system partners to implement that. So I hope, so that's kind of a bit of more system approach and bringing together some of the learning we can pull from that together. The next bit I know is always an ask is kind of how can you support and was one of the challenges that was given to us when we were asked to come here today. So I think one of the main bits is actually, to endorse and support the system ownership of these work streams that we're talking about in this new strategy, which is a 5-year strategy, to bring those people across the system together to work through this. Another key part, which Amy's spoken about in the kind of community strand of that work, is raising awareness of the Orange Button scheme. So there is a very easy way to do that, which is sharing the posters, championing the scheme within your communities. If we have a number, I think, of people within the council and in members that have done that training and are, and I think they, would be very happy to share their experience. But raising the number of people that we can get on that really brings us into that community approach to trying to share that the way to prevent is to open up those conversations. Also to help promote open mental health and Mindline, and Andy shared some of the resources today. So you've got those and those are readily available, and the fact that that is open to anyone at any point to discuss those issues. And the main bit is being an advocate for this and to challenge stigma and discrimination that often comes around this topic, and to support you to be confident to be able to discuss this with individuals, because that's the way that we will be able to work together to prevent future deaths in Somerset from suicide. I'll leave you with, I know it's a very emotive topic.
It is. I know I'm first. I'm first. I'm going to be first this time. I'm always last. Always last.
Very good, Jill.
And what I was going to ask you, if I may, thank you very much. And it is a very emotive subject, and it is something I think that touches us all. No matter if you hear it, see it, whatever. The thing is, I absolutely want you to know that I can't bear acronyms, can't bear them. And I found myself flipping backwards because I couldn't find what was VCFSE. I couldn't find that. And I know in the beginning you put it there, but it's very, very hard because you speak this language all the time. And I found myself going backwards and backwards to find what they were. So if you could just be mindful that we're all in the same boat, because we do want to understand what you're saying. But I want to say thank you about the shared data. I think that's amazing that you've managed to do that. I think that's incredible. I think I have evidence working with the police. The police do a great job about the preventative. Although they're reactive, right? Rather, they're called at the scene, but they often work very hard to talk people down. And I have evidence of what they've been doing as well, working alongside yourself. So I do praise what they do as well, because they're just ordinary folk. They're not the specialists, but they certainly had a lot of training in that area. You know, can you just give us an instance of what the support benches? I think is a brilliant idea. I've seen them. I thought that was excellent. But the orange button scheme, I have no idea what that is.
So the Orange Button Scheme is our community suicide awareness scheme in Somerset. So it's basically a way of recognising people in our communities that have completed quality assured suicide prevention training, or mental health first aid training is another one that people could have done. So it basically to sign up to wear an orange button, which is, I haven't actually got mine on, but have you got yours on? I don't know if you got yours. It's an orange badge, that's like a visible outward sign to show that that person's had that training, they're confident to talk about suicide, and they know where to signpost people for support. It's a bit similar to kind of the dementia friendly scheme. So, you know, that's like the purple kind of flower that people can wear, and it shows that they've done that training and they can have those conversations and support people. So that's what it's all about really, and kind of helping people to start those conversations, challenge stigma, and just get people talking about suicide. Because, you know, even if somebody just asks, oh, why are you wearing that orange button, that then opens up a conversation.
Do you think it's something that we as counsellors should do training on or something? Because I have, in my life, as being a counsellor, I've had many people on the very edge, and I've been able to, I don't know how, somehow get them to just think and seek a doctor, because I'm not a professional. But we do meet many people in our lives that need attention, and sometimes you just don't know if you're saying the right thing. You hope you are, but you just don't know.
I think it'd be amazing if all of the counsellors could do the suicide alertness training is the kind of shortest course that you can do. So that's the 4-hour training, and we deliver that in public health. We can deliver it online or face to face. So we'd be happy to run a session for the counsellors, definitely.
I think online for a lot of counsellors probably might be easier. I don't know, what does everybody think? Would they like to do the training?
Yeah, I think online would probably be.
But I think online training, could we organise that online training?
Yeah, I know there's some counsellors that have definitely already done the course at one of the other community sessions, and I know we've run a suicide awareness course. That's our 1-hour course that we offer, but we can definitely look to deliver the 4-hour one online.
So I'll leave that with Jamie. He'll sort that out because he's brilliant. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jamie. I'm now going to go. This is very dear. I know Claire has been wanting this very much, so I'm going to hand over to Claire now.
Yeah, just to say that the ongoing training of counsellors, because I think it was before Jill was chair, it came up and you promoted the training, and then many of us did it, but it obviously needs to keep circulating around. In a briefing from Mind that I was in recently, they talked about the stigma around mental health being a significant barrier, and I think this suicide prevention begins and ends with communities, and I feel like your work should be about putting your arms around entire communities, and you know, and that's where your strategies are leading. In the small community that I live in, we've been impacted by suicide, and it's just how it affects everybody, directly, indirectly. You're in your community. It's a tiny village really, and the community around the school has about 60 children, and 2 parents, separate families have taken their lives. My question is around treatments for mental health issues like depression, for example. What work are you aware of that's going into those treatments? Because the side effects of some of these treatments are to feel suicidal. And it just seems to me an area that's not really talked about much. So you have, say, if you identify that you're not feeling well, mentally well, you go on a treatment and then that makes you feel suicidal, and then it could lead to an action. Just seems to be an important area to be looking at. And I just wondered how that feeds into your solutions to preventable deaths. Thank you.
So I think that's kind of work that we need to do with GPs, and it's definitely something that we're looking to try and do. Definitely always trying to engage with GPs and do training and things like that. But I think you're speaking specifically around the medications that people can be prescribed, which can actually increase the risk of suicide, particularly in the first kind of 4 weeks when people are taking them. So yeah, that's something we need to kind of take forward and talk to GPs about. But I would hope, and again, hopefully through engagement with them, we can understand this, that people are offered more than just medications as well, and really think about that kind of holistic approach to supporting people through a mental illness. Obviously, we've got lots of great offers with open mental health that GPs will be aware of, which can really help people to build that support system around them and that kind of resilience. Alongside any kind of medications that they're taking. I think that kind of holistic approach is really, really important when you're treating mental illness.
Thank you. Can I go to Andy? Oh, I'm sorry, Andy, I apologise.
Thanks, Jill. I was just going to add to that. I guess there's a piece of work that Open Mental Health are doing, which is alongside what Public Health have been doing wider, just working with GPs, because the literature, literally, I put on your tables, that's what we need GPs also to be aware of, because there's maybe somebody is prescribed medication, talking therapies are generally offered first, but it's actually giving people those other supports. So while they're starting out on that journey, they could talk to somebody instantly, they can access an in-person appointment. And that's what the Mindline family is about, that access to telephone support there and then, or live chat. And then the crisis safe space is actually about somebody anywhere in the county being able to go in and speak to somebody that day if that's what they need, aside from other support options that might be out there.
Because it might be, just add, it could be potentially like sleeping tablets, given sleeping tablets and then the side effect is depression, and then the depression goes into suicide. Then you've lost somebody. It just seems a really important area to be looking into, I believe. Certainly is.
And I think that's why part of that community base is making the community aware of the availability of services to talk, and that people are there to listen and to engage with those services at the point that you need them, because we know that it's not, that a larger proportion of people who complete suicide are those who are not in contact already with mental health services, and therefore it's really important to make sure that we have got these leaflets and that availability and information is there for the community as a whole.
That's excellent, thank you. I know when I had my accident, I was able to speak to somebody that knew a little bit, because I was very, very bad after my accident, very bad. And I was able to speak to somebody that knew something about this and was in this field. And I valued it very, very much, because it did a tremendous job. And when you've been through it yourself, you kind of realise, don't you? So, okay, can I go now to Lucy Trim, Councillor Trim?
Thank you, Jill. So I have a couple of questions. Firstly, I did the orange button training 2 years ago now, over 2 years ago. Is there a refresher course, or should I repeat? I feel as though I probably don't remember a great deal of it, if you see what I mean. And so I'd really appreciate the opportunity to redo it. Actually, interestingly, after I took that training, a few months later, there was a lady who drove her mobility scooter out into the road in front of my car. and I had clocked her because she was driving with her eyes closed and she seemed to speed up. But I didn't twig until afterwards that it was intentional. I just stopped because I was able to stop. But this lady had repeated, what I found out later, people walking past going, she's always doing this, she's always doing this. And so these are cries for help. And maybe she drove in front of my car because she could see that I was going quite slowly. And so that is one type of attempt which can eventually be successful. So I'm not dumbing it down or making it out to be sort of unimportant. But obviously she was known to mental health services, she was known to the ambulance people that came out to take over from us in keeping her off the road. So you know, you have people that you are aware of, but very often suicide happens in people that nobody, even the people very closest to them, could even have foreseen. And those conversations don't even begin. And they are those most unexpected cases. And so you talked about looking back at successful attempts and piecing together that evidence. And I wondered how you would be able to use that information going forward to perhaps identify more of those less clear cases. Thank you. Oh, and also just a very quick one as well. The crisis safe space, does that cover just the Somerset County that we cover, or all of Somerset, or is it even wider?
So you will find that other areas will have an equivalent, but this is our Somerset offer ultimately, that information. So if you went to North Somerset, I know they've got an offer. I know there's an offer in Bristol. So each area around the country would have an offer. One thing I haven't mentioned as well, which is an additional change in sort of the last 12 months, if you ring 111 now, you have option 2, which is a mental health option, and that would take you through to Mindline in the Somerset area, but would take you through to equivalent supports in other areas.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, because I was just thinking, you know, if I went to Bath or something for the day and something happened, then, you know, would that number work? So that's brilliant, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Can I go to,
hang on, sorry, there were more, just a couple more questions.
Oh,
that I'd asked.
absolutely. Why would I not remember this? Sorry.
Yes, I waffle on.
I think one was about a refresher course for the Orange Button scheme, which I think I'll pan to Amy.
Yes, we don't do refresher courses, but we do advocate for people doing them at least every 3 years. So yeah, you'll be welcome to attend another one, just to refresh your kind of knowledge on those.
Thank you.
And I think the second one's around the data, and very much what we have put forward through this strategy is our desire and intention to try and collate more data and triangulate it to get a better picture of the not only those cases that are, or verdicts that are a suicide or an open verdict, but also of the softer data we have of those attempts, and to try and bring some of that together to triangulate and build that picture, because we don't have that, and we're not aware that there are many places in the country that are doing that, but we obviously have a desire to use data that we're getting from things like the Coast Guards or from the police and from other, which is part of why we want a data sharing agreement that is wider to enable us to bring that data together, to start to analyse it and look at it in a more triangulated way.
And that's brilliant, because at the end of the day, I think in the Orange Button training was not useful to me in the attempt that I witnessed, because this lady was in a huge mental health crisis and wasn't in a position to listen to anything I could have said anyway. But obviously I do worry, you know, there's been a recent case of someone my husband knows, and nobody would have known. It was completely out of character. And so those are the cases, I think those are the ones that often, I don't know the data, but it seems to me we hear so often of nobody knew, and yet they're successful first time. So gosh, to be able to prevent that would be incredible.
And that's part of the purpose behind setting up a premature mortality group, to look at those different groups of deaths that are happening, from drugs, from homelessness, from suicide, from domestic violence and abuse, that we can then start to try and share that learning in a better way across the system.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Now to Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. A couple of questions I had on this, and it's good to see the orange button is going ahead, but not everybody, even with the best will in the world, will be able to sort of do that work for different reasons. What are the current statistics on suicide for Somerset at the moment? Particularly in terms of age, numbers, age range, and also sex and gender. That would be my first question. And are we starting to, and where are we on this? Is it a problem? Are we seeing more? Is it starting to drop? I know it's very early days for this strategy, and that would certainly be something to monitor, because ultimately, hopefully the numbers will go down because this strategy actually is starting to work. And also in terms of rurality, because we're quite a rural county, we've got very small hamlets, and agriculture and vets as well are quite a high risk group, still seen as a high risk group. So what links are you going to have into some of the farmer, agricultural, rural communities? So they are aware that there is now what looks to be a very wide offer. And then as well, if you do sort of are worried about someone and you do contact, which I think is on, I think it's the inside page of this leaflet, how do you then deal with the person that's referred? Because it's through a third party, you're worried about somebody. How do you actually then deal with that to ensure that the person that you've expressed concern about does actually get help? Because ultimately it's down to the individual. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. So on the first one, in terms of data, I can take away your request for more details and provide that. In terms of a general picture, we are still an outlier in Somerset for our suicide rate as it's published. We are stabilising where other parts of the country are not in that increase, if you like. So whilst we are not dropping to a level that would bring us to not be an outlier, we are seeing some levelling in that, which is an encouraging picture. But obviously every number relates to a suicide, which is a tragic thing to happen. And those numbers are often very small, so we need to be aware of the fluctuations in them. So the picture from the work that we've been doing to date, something seems to be going in the right direction. We're not seeing an increase, and we're not seeing the same increase that other parts of the country are seeing within that, but I will get that data and that publishable data we can provide. There's a second question about particular groups, I think. So part of the strategy is around how we work with communities, essentially, and work it to get, I think it's not a particularly great strapline, but it is kind of, suicide is everyone's business and everybody can help to normalise that and reduce.
This was more about reaching into rural. Sorry, this was about reaching into rural and agricultural communities, because agriculture and certainly vets we recognise it as a much higher risk group than any other. And I know there's been various rural initiatives. We've got Farmer Ardos. We also have the Farm and Community Network, which do work closely with Mind. And it was how the strategy is going to be applied, so as rural areas in effect don't miss out on what does seem to be the enhanced offer with much wider options.
So yeah, like you said, we've got some really great projects going on at the minute, like Farmer Ardos, which is such a wonderful approach, because it's all about the pop-up kitchen table. You know, it's not kind of saying, look, we're here to talk about your mental health, because that makes farmers run a mile, basically. Yeah. So that's a really wonderful project that's getting people talking. We've also got, I run a rural health and wellbeing forum, and that's a really great space for us to connect with organisations like the Farming Community Network, the farmers markets, and we have representatives come along from there. Farmerados are there, and some of our experts by experience from Open Mental Health come along too. And that's a really great space to make sure we're sharing the information about the training with those groups. And actually, we're going to be doing some of the suicide prevention training with our young farmers, the Somerset Young Farmers Group. So that's really positive. And we've made sure we've shared information with the Farming Community Network, so they're linked up to kind of the local services that we've got as well, to try and make sure we're making it more accessible for people that might from Somerset that might call the Farming Community Network, and we want to try and connect them up to that real kind of local support. So there are things happening, and we're trying to, I would really like to do the orange button training with some of our veterinary practices in Somerset, and that's something we'll definitely be looking to try and do over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that on veterinary practice, a lot of them now are part of corporate chains. So the old-fashioned independent vet, I think, is something that is becoming a rarity. But certainly there are major chains that do cover Somerset, Farm Vet Southwest, Synergy, to name but two, Delaware. So there are these big, large animal practices, and I'm sure that, you know, some of them would be willing to take part in that, because usually it can be the vet is probably the person that is the first person to pick up that there's a problem here in all sorts of different ways. The other group you sometimes see that go on farm are milk recorders, because there are the milk recording services, and some farms still do have people come in, take the milk samples, record the milk yield of the cows, and when you're stuck in a parlour for 2 or 3 hours, it is surprising what those milk recorders do find out and record, and they can sometimes be another front line of defence that they wind up, the agony aunt is. And again, the two main organisations for that are Cattle Information Service, CIS, and National Milk Records. It may be worth talking to them as well, because not all farms have routine vet visits. Most of them, I think, do now because of farm assurance. But in terms of milk recording, again, not all farms use in-person milk recording services, but it is, again, it's another sentinel, so to speak. It's another line of defence. And if those people could be trained up to orange button, or at least know what is aware, so they can discreetly leave one of these cards, for example, just on a desk without even saying a word. That's sometimes all you might need, is to just have the information there and available.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. We did some work last year, and we had somebody from Arla who was part of that work stream, and I think they got them to deliver some open mental health leaflets to the farms that they were supporting in Somerset. So yeah, that's a really good idea, and I think more like that we can do. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, if you're looking at distribution networks, then yes, they're one of the main players, but there's also Molly Wiseman, which is just literally down the road. They take a lot of milk from Somerset, and there's also the independent cheesemakers. So again, there is Dairy UK, which is the sort of generic organisation for the milk buyers. It may be worth raising that with them, so as they can get this information. So it's not just Arla doing it, but possibly a lot of other milk buyers as well. So the more information that goes down to farms, because there's less people visiting farms these days than there were 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Thank you. I'm conscious of time.
Sorry,
it's okay. I just want to say maybe that you could bring some leaflets. Our full council is on the 21st of May, and maybe at the canal side, it might be a good idea if you could perhaps bring us some of these, where some people who aren't on this committee or aren't associated with this committee would find very, very useful, if that's any good. We've got the last speaker, and then I've got a question, and this is the last speaker, Councillor Tom Power.
Tom.
I don't think I asked the question.
No.
Sorry, you put
your hand up. You put your hand up to speak.
Did I?
I've got my hand up to speak.
Did you?
Easy to mix them in.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Rarely see them in the same room at the same time.
Sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. I did write it down. So Emily, first on, if you like.
Mine's only very quickly, and it's actually leading straight on from what Sue was talking about, the organisations that can help farmers. It is known that there's been an increase when it's just based on farmer community. I was made aware of the NFU's Farm Safety Foundation putting out the yellow wellies, and I don't know if there's any collaboration there with that particular group as well, that are reaching out to farmers with, with the ideas of making sure that farmers have optimum mental health. So I just wanted to mention another string to the bow of help. So that's the NFU's farm. It's called Yellow Wellies. It's been around for a couple of years now, out of the Safety Foundation, the NFU.
Okay, thank you for that. That sounds very good. Councillor Stanton, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to ask a question about the Samaritans, but I actually found the answer to that online. But it prompts another question, which is, people can call Mind Line or they can call the Samaritans. I noticed in the leaflet one of the people called Mind Line was feeling suicidal. So what happens in practice? I mean, do people tend to call Mind Line the Samaritans? Where's the crossover? And is there a referral process between the two?
I guess part of it is to offer people choice, because not everybody wants to access for different reasons services. So we do work with Samaritans. They will actually often act as a backup if for some reason there's an issue with our offer. In practice, if somebody calls, they will have the ability to have potentially a half-hour call, and then if they need more support, the service would then be linking them probably to the crisis safe space. So there would then be, and the crisis safe space can be in person, but can actually be another telephone call if that's practically what they need, or a Zoom or a Teams even. And from there, they would then get linked up to further one-to-one support. We've got the ability, and this is also where the partnership with NHS 111 comes in. We can escalate upwards, so if it ultimately needs inpatient or further support from the medical side of things, we can escalate up to the mental health teams. Equally, we can take it downwards if it doesn't need that escalation upwards, but needs return support. One of the things that we commonly find actually is at the point that somebody's reached out, just knowing that there is an appointment or there is support likely to come on the way actually can be enough to kind of hold them. And of course, the team will talk through techniques to kind of help them stay where they are, stay safe. And that will include, and that's where it comes back to this community thing, looking at the strengths and supports that somebody's got, but also we recognise sometimes people may not have those. So that's where we would then step in and be more proactive in the wider open mental health provision and support. Does that cover?
So the other way around, so Samaritans will refer to you or refer to crisis safe?
Yes, so Samaritans have got our details. You've got Taunton Samaritans got a base in Yeovil Samaritans. One change that Samaritans have had is they aren't any longer able to offer in-person support in their centres. So that's often where our support might come in.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, if I may, Somerset seems to have a high rate of suicide. So we said, but forgive me, is it in your strategy? I would like to see some figures. I'd like to see ages. And I know that sounds a bit gruesome. I don't mean it to, but I just want to understand. I want to understand the ages where this happens. Is it female, males, that kind of detail. Now, this may be in your strategy, so I apologise if I'm asking a question that's already out there.
And that information is in the strategy, but generally in Somerset, our trends, as far as we know, kind of reflect what we do see nationally. So it's around 75% males, and kind of the age group where we see the highest rate is that kind of middle age, so kind of 40 to 50, 40 to 55, in both men and women. And again, that's the trend that's kind of seen nationally as well.
We don't know why that is. We have no idea. Is it?
I think there are kind of lots of things that can be at play, particularly in that time in people's lives. So things like relationship breakdown is a big kind of risk factor for suicide, parental alienation, things like that. Job loss is a big factor. People retiring, that often is seen as a really positive thing, but actually it's a really big change to people in their life and their sense of who they are. And also their connection to others, which can often be somebody's kind of support network. And then you've also got things, so thinking about women going through the menopause at that age in their life, and we know that that can have a huge impact on women's mental health, and that's something that's getting a lot more recognition at the moment. And things like children leaving home, there's lots of things that can be going on at that time that can really affect people's sense of identity and their kind of purpose in life.
I must be a terrible mother. When my children went for university, I thought, oh, my life. Anyway, sorry. But I'd just like to say thank you so much for today. Thank you to Patsy, Amy and Andy. Thank you for the work you do. It's a very, very essential work, and we'd love to have you back at some point, if that would be all right, to give us a further feedback. I want to know the trend, really. I don't want there to be a trend, but there may be, and it may be important for you to come back to us if that would be okay. But I want to thank you very much for today. Thank you for your patience. I'm so sorry the meeting went over an hour and a quarter longer than it should be. But as you know, this has been, for yourselves as well, a very, very important part of today. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Members, just to recap on where we are now, we've got on item 6, we have the budget, good budget result. So I think we've got to be able to say that, good budget result. The maternity services generally is going to come to the next meeting, which is, I've already said the date, which I said, anyway, next one. August, that's right, 21st, I think I said, that's right. And then Kirsty is going to give us more detail on the facts and figures on housing and going to come back to us as well. So it's going to be a two-pronged approach on the next agenda. And I want you to also think about the work streams, please, that you want. And on today, we're going to have online training organised by Jamie, because I want to wear an orange badge. And I want to wear an orange badge knowing I can and knowing I know how. So I think, but I do think it should be perhaps, Sarah might agree, maybe to all members, maybe offer that to all members, not just members of this committee. I think it's a vital part, and it means we're team working with yourselves. So I think, so we'll leave that to Jamie to organise, and he'll be in touch with us all. Is that okay? Is everybody happy?
Yes.
And we haven't got any, our main theme is to have a recommendation. We've got to work towards a recommendation. We're a credible group, but today I think it's been about the learning process and about going on. But obviously I do really want us to move forward to get a recommendation so that we can actually push forward things that Sarah wants to put on that agenda to work with you. And I think that's what I would like to do. Lucy, sorry.
Only a quick one, but I think it serves as a recommendation that all councillors are offered the opportunity to undergo their training. So I think we have one. It's not a recommendation to executive, but it's a recommendation that we will do that.
But I also thank all members today. You've really, really played a big part today, and I really appreciate it. Everybody has entered into this meeting today, and it's really good questions. Really robust from our, Graham, very, very good, and everyone else has asked, and the thing that some of you have come as subgroup meeting members, you've done an excellent job. So thank you very, very much. So I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you.